Chapter 552. Gudatsi and Matthew both followed Wu Ming's finger and looked at the sky. The strange huge circle was like a circular lamp that was pressed on the huge ceiling in the sky, giving people a very mysterious feeling. Hey, what is that? Gudatsi was obviously shocked. It's never happened before. Matthew also widened his eyes and looked at the huge circle in the sky. Like Gudatsi and Matthew, Wu Ming also stared at the sky. Then Wu Ming said his guess. If I'm not wrong, it's probably the Magic King's noble phantasm. Hey. Gudatsi and Matthew were both shocked. After all, I don't think anyone else can release that level of attack over the singularity except for that guy. Gudatsi and Matthew looked at each other. It seemed that this was the only possibility. I guess, I'm afraid that every singularity has this circle, but the circle was hidden by that guy. It could be said that Wu Ming had not been to the previous singularities, and the only one he had been to was Winterwood City. When he was in Winterwood City, Wu Ming noticed that the sky was slightly different, but he didn't pay much attention to it. When he was in London, because he was underground, he couldn't see the sky, so Wu Ming didn't pay attention to it. At this singularity, Wu Ming noticed the abnormality in the sky. Deliberately hiding it made people notice the abnormality. That guy's move is bad. Wu Ming ridiculed mercilessly. But even so, the other party didn't suffer any losses. The price of exposing this noble phantasm was that almost all the servants were sent back to the Valhalla. Nightingale, Geronimo, Atlanta Edison, Tamamonome, Billy Boy, Robin Hood, Elizabeth, Kyoheim Helena. It could be said that the attack just now had killed those 10 servants. At present, the American continent, which had more than 30 servants in the beginning, was now left with only a dozen servants. Sharon, Achilles, Rama, Attila, and the unconscious Roman girl escaped the attack because they were with Wu Ming. Because of the duel, Arjona and Karna were located in the northwestern part of the American continent. He reckoned that Aeson and Demetrius, as well as Hercules, who had Wu Ming filling up the lake, should not have been affected. Maeve and Cedo were sent away by Wu Ming using the portal. Gudatsi's personal servant, Matthew Gillett, and Wu Ming, who was currently with Gudatsi. Finally, there was Pamilia, who was sleeping in Riverton. Speaking of this, Wu Ming was quite helpless and angry. According to Gudatsi, Pamilia said that she would take a nap when it was time for her to sleep. Knowing that their team's mission was only to delay the Romans, Pamilia said that she would take a nap first. Then there was no then. The vampire was still in Riverton. At least Wu Ming could be sure that she was not here. But there was no other way. Who would have thought that a simple delay would trigger the appearance of the demon god pillar? If Pamilia was here before, even if Floros got the power of the Magic King, Wu Ming estimated that Pamilia would be able to kill Floros if he used his trump card. After all, even if a child was armed with a machete, he would not be able to fight an unarmed Special Forces soldier. No longer thinking about this matter, Wu Ming began to think about the remaining servants. In addition to Wu Ming himself, there were a total of 14 servants left, not to mention the strength of the remaining servants. It could be said that if it was an ordinary Holy Grail war, the 14 servants except for Wu Ming could be said to be enough. However, with only 14 servants, in this American continent, where the magic power had been raised to the level of a god, it was not enough. Not to mention, there was a guy like Aeson, who was useless and only knew how to drive a boat. It could be said that if the halo in the sky did not hide anymore, except for Wu Ming, the rest of the servants would probably have to leave. Although Matthew could block the attack just now, it did not mean that Matthew could block the rest of the attack. Matthew could block it once, it was already very good. After all, Matthew was still not a mature servant. At present, Matthew was still unable to use Galahad's noble phantasm. Otherwise, there would not be a situation where Matthew could only protect Gudatsi alone. Besides, not everyone would choose to stand on Gudatsi's side. At present, only 7 servants, Wu Ming, Matthew, Sharon, Achilles, Rama, Attila, and Maeve, could serve as the combat power to protect Gudatsi. Pamilia's whereabouts were unknown. Maybe she had woken up, or maybe she was still sleeping. The Roman girl rescued from the demon god pillar had been in a coma, and she could not leave the Holy Grail. She could only rely on the Holy Grail to maintain the integrity of her spiritual base. She could not stay too close to Rama, And even if she woke up with her broken spiritual base, she would not have much combat power. As for Arzu and Karna, Karna wanted to come back to help Gadatsi, but Arzu was unwilling. It could be said that if Karna chose to help Gadatsi, then Arzu would definitely choose to help the Magus King. In this way, he would be able to fulfill his wish and become enemies with Karna again. Karna, who could not get away, could only accompany Arzu as a sacrifice. Hercules probably had not broken free from the bottom of the lake yet. After all, there were so many fake heavenly locks that were no different from the real heavenly locks. Even Hercules would have to spend a little effort to break them. Of course, unless Wuming personally helped him break them. Aeson and Demetrius. Demetrius would definitely follow Aeson. And with Aeson's character, Wuming didn't expect him to do anything. It could be said that as long as he did not cause trouble, he would be thankful. At this moment, Maeve was not here. Sharon, Achilles, Rama, and Attila were still rushing here. At present, only Wuming and Matthew could protect Gadatsi. After thinking for a while, Wuming waved to Gadatsi. Gadatsi, come here. Although Gadatsi was puzzled, because of her trust in Wuming, she did not hesitate to walk over. Give me your hand. After saying that, Wuming stretched out his hand and held Gadatsi's slender little hand. Hey, what are you doing, assassin? Gadatsi did not care about shaking hands with Wuming, but Gadatsi did not understand what Wuming wanted to do, and Matthew was the same. Could it be that this was a farewell before death? Just kidding. I'm just giving you my strongest defense. Relax. Then, Wuming did not pay attention to Gadatsi and Matthew. Holding Gadatsi's hand, Wuming closed his eyes. Then, a beautiful scene appeared in front of Matthew's eyes. The holy and invincible armor on Wuming's body, under the effect of Wuming's magic, emitted a dazzling brilliance. Then, the armor automatically disintegrated, and then in a series of light, the armor compressed and transformed into a set of armor similar to that of a woman's. Finally, the armor attached to Gadatsi's body, under the shocked expression on Gadatsi's face, forming a slender and beautiful set of white clothes-fitting armor for a young girl. This made Gadatsi, who still had her hand in Wuming's hand, stunned. Then, an earth-shattering scream resounded through the sky. Ah! Chapter 553. Wah. Wah. What? What is this? A person who was wrapped in close-fitting female armor and wearing an elegant dragon-crowned helmet shouted in excitement and surprise. This person was none other than Gadatsi, who was wearing Wuming's armor. Say, Senior, are you okay? Matthew stood beside Gadatsi at a loss and asked cautiously. I'm fine, I'm just shocked to put on assassin's armor. Gadatsi's voice came from the seemingly thin but actually heavy armor. Fortunately, Wuming adjusted the armor and added a lot of adjustment tactics. The specific effect was that Gadatsi, a modern girl without the strength to truss a chicken, could wear such a compressed and heavy armor without changing the quality and defense. After that, Wuming smiled helplessly as he looked at Gadatsi, who was uncomfortable talking to Matthew because of the helmet. Relax, inject magic, the armor will respond to you. Although Gadatsi was a novice with no experience in magic, after so long, under the guidance of Roman, Olga Marie and Gadatsi, she could still do the ordinary extraction and application of magic. With that said, as if demonstrating, Wuming put his hand on Gadatsi, and then the helmet on Gadatsi's head split and attached to her shoulders and back. Hey. So simple. Gadatsi was interested, and she used magic with her small face. In an instant, the helmet that was disassembled and disassembled closed again, and wrapped Gadatsi's small head. Although Wuming wanted to complain about Gadatsi's constipated expression just now, then Gadatsi controlled the helmet to disassemble again, and her excited little head was exposed again. It's really amazing, then, Matthew poked Gadatsi. Senior, now is not the time to play. In an instant, Gadatsi's small face became awkward. Right. Right, assassin, you gave me the armor, what will you do? Gadatsi saw before that the cover that trapped the demon god pillar was made of Wuming's armor. And Gadatsi also saw that the defense wall was not damaged at all under the powerful attacks of Wuming and the demon god pillar. This armor was undoubtedly a super powerful noble artifact. If you don't have this armor, what will you do when the light circle attacks again? Gadatsi said worriedly. Indeed, Wu Ming, the berserker Holy King Sealan's strongest noble artifact was this set of armor. With an invincible defense and a light spear that could be strengthened, Wu Ming could be said to be invincible. Of course, this invincibility only meant that Wu Ming would not be defeated. It did not mean that he was truly invincible. If demon god Shutten could use the Holy Grail and the blessing of the Sun God to release the power of the sun, because Wu Ming thought it was troublesome, then facing the demon god Pillar Floros not long ago, Wu Ming really had no way to kill it with the body of a servant. Although it seemed that Floros was no different from the other demon god pillars, Floros said that it had obtained the power of its king. Naturally, it could not be compared to the other demon god pillars. However, it was precisely because of this that Wu Ming borrowed Rama's noble artifact. It's because I'm afraid that the light circle will attack again, so I let you wear this noble artifact. Wu Ming gently touched Gadatsi's little head and messed up her hair. If it's me, I have it. Wu Ming turned his head. Following the direction where Wu Ming turned his head, Gadatsi saw a holy sword that was similar to the Excalibur floating beside Wu Ming. As if responding to Wu Ming's words, the divine blade of salvation shone with holy light and attracted lightning. You should know that the best defense is offense. With the divine blade of salvation, nothing will happen to me. But if you don't have this set of armor, it's very likely that something will happen to you. Wu Ming tried to reason with Gudazi. So be obedient to Chica. In the end, Wu Ming ended with a pampering tone. I know. Gudatsi's cheeks blushed. No matter how good their relationship was, after experiencing such gentle flirting, as a girl who has never been in a relationship before, it was quite fatal. Even Mashu, who was next to him, was blushing like a braised crab. Wu Ming nodded with satisfaction. Sharon and the others will be here soon. You two remember not to run around. Gudatsi and Matthew nodded. Then I'll leave for a moment. With that, a dark purple ripple swallowed Wu Ming, and then the ripple disappeared. Hey, can you hear me? At this time, Gadatsi's wristband sounded. Leader. Is the communication device fixed? Gadatsi asked in surprise. However, in response to Gadatsi's inquiry, only the voice was heard, and not the image. But the voice was no longer Olga Marie's voice, but Roman's. How could it be fixed? That's magic power comparable to hundreds of holy swords. The explosive magic power directly blew up Chaldea's device. Da Vinci's really tired this time. However, before Roman could finish complaining, Olga Marie's voice was heard again. Get out of my way. After Olga Marie's roar, there was the sound of someone falling to the ground. Then Olga Marie's calm voice was heard. Speaking of which, under the attack just now besides you, who else survived? Yes, Assassin is fine. Achilles, Sharon, and Rama, who were with Assassin, are also fine. The attack just now seemed to be directed at us, or rather, it was directed at Senpai, Mashu explained to Olgamai. Is that so? Gadatsi heard Olga Marie's voice and was a little confused. Why did it sound like she was relieved? In fact, Olga Marie wanted to ask for Wu Ming's comfort, but after all, she was at Sundra, so it was unlikely that she would ask directly. Ahem. In short, Chaldea can only perform simple communication and ray shift for now. It's too dangerous for Tachika and Matthew to continue staying there. Haven't all the enemies been defeated? Let's use ray shift to come back first. This made Gadatsi and Matthew shocked. After all, Gadatsi and Matthew's mission was to repair the singularity. It could be said that the two completely completed the mission in the past few singularities before returning to Chaldea. But this time, Olga Marie proposed to temporarily return to Chaldea. Haven't all the Holy Grails in this singularity been collected? As long as the Holy Grail is taken away from this singularity, it will repair itself. Then Gadatsi smiled awkwardly. That. Director, have you forgotten? All the recovered Holy Grails are temporarily in Assassin's hands. Matthew also added a fatal blow. And the Celtic Holy Grail is not in the hands of the senior cylinder. It seems to be in the hands of Queen Maeve. In other words, you've been busy in this singularity for half a day, and you haven't gotten a single Holy Grail. Olga Marie's tone was a little strange. Although I'm sorry, Matthew said. But it's true. Gadatsi said. Then, the device on Gadatsi's wrist dimmed, which meant that the other party had cut off the communication. Gudatsi and Matthew looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Chapter 554. A moment later, Gudatsi's bracelet lit up again, but this time, the contact was no longer Olga Marie, but Dr. Roman. Roman said that Director Olga Marie was muttering, "How come we didn't get a single Holy Grail? That guy is an idiot. We could have just given the Holy Grail to Chaldea." He cursed as he left the control room. He seemed to have returned to his own room. "Will the director be okay?" Gudatsi asked worriedly. "Don't worry, the director isn't as weak as you think. She's still very strong." Romo's calm and amiable voice was heard. On this point, Roman could be said to have the most right to speak. After all, when Olga Marie became the director, Roman had already been in Chaldea for a long time. It could even be said that Roman was Olga Marie's senior in a sense. For the time being, Gudatsi and Matthew began to think about what to do next. "Then, Doctor, what should we do next?" Matthew asked. This question made Roman silent. At present, the 3 Holy Grails were already in the hands of Wuming, and the Celtic Holy Grail was also in the hands of Maeve. It could be said that as long as Wuming went to see Maeve, brought the Holy Grail back, and gave it to Gudatsi, then everything would be solved. So at present, it seemed that the only thing to do was to wait. In the control room, Roman helplessly scratched his head, and then said to Gudatsi on the other side, "Well, let's meet up with Sharon first, then think about what to do next." Roman said weakly, "Okay, Doctor." Then Gudatsi and Matthew closed the communication, and began to walk in the direction where Sharon and the others left to meet up with them. In the control room, the remaining staff members were working nervously. Only now could Roman breathe a sigh of relief. Roman sat down on the chair behind him and leaned back slightly. Magic Kings. Noble artifact. Heh. The 5th singularity, the American continent, Washington's White House. When Wuming sent Cedo and Maeve away using the portal, he had set this place as his destination. After all, this was their base camp. It was much safer than other places. However, in the end, Wuming still miscalculated. Dark purple ripples appeared, and Wuming jumped out of the ripples. Wuming stood firmly on the ground, but what welcomed him was an incomparably huge tentacle. Dong! In an instant, the tentacle slammed heavily on the ground, and the ground caved in because of the huge impact of the tentacle. Immediately afterward, the saber light with lightning struck the tentacle, instantly cutting it off. Wuming stood beside the severed tentacle and brandished his sword. Without a doubt, the tentacle did not hit Wuming. The moment the tentacle fell, Wuming dodged it. Wuming looked at the owner of the tentacle with a serious expression, a huge pillar of flesh that rose into the sky. Demon God Pillar Flawless. That's right, at this moment, in front of Wuming, on the White House Square in Washington, the same Demon God Pillar as Flawless stood there. Wuming had a guess. This Demon God Pillar Flawless was summoned from the Holy Grail held by Maeve. The evidence was Maeve, who was embedded in the flesh wall of the Demon God Pillar, with only half of her body exposed. At this moment, Maeve's body was drooping, and she was obviously unconscious. As for Cedo, who was already unconscious and brought back by Maeve, Wuming, who had already spread out his mental power, indicated that he did not find him. Wuming estimated that Cedo was either swallowed by the Demon God Pillar, and was in the body of the Demon God Pillar, or had been killed by the Demon God Pillar, and returned to the Martyr's Palace. At this moment Flawless, who failed the sneak attack, spoke. "You can really find this place, Dragon of Origin." It was still Lev's voice, and it was still an unpleasant voice. "Demon God Pillars are all as disgusting as cockroaches. This is really an eye-opener." Wuming mocked mercilessly. Although Wuming also knew that to kill the Demon God Pillar, he had to kill all 72 of them at once, but he could resurrect immediately after dying together. This was a bit of a bug. Of course, an ordinary Demon God Pillar that appears at a singularity can't do it, but I have the King's blessing. Of course, such a thing can be done. As long as there was the Holy Grail and the sacrifice, Flawless could appear on his own. This was the reason why Flawless suddenly appeared in Alexandria, and the reason why he could resurrect in the White House after dying. But I didn't expect you to put the Holy Grail in the hands of this servant. I thought you had already put it away. But this is good. If not, I won't be able to appear again. Ha ha ha. The demon god pillar laughed and shook his body. Maeve, who was embedded in the body of the demon god pillar, also shook along with the demon god pillar. Then, Maeve was shaken awake. I am. Maeve, who had just woken up, was still not completely awake. She was a little confused about the current situation. Maeve, are you okay? Wu Ming immediately shouted at Maeve after seeing Maeve wake up. Wu Ming's shout woke Maeve up, but it also made Maeve quite unhappy. Really, little Sai, can't you pretend that you don't care about me? This way this guy can threaten you. Maeve was like a young girl, looking at Wu Ming with a puffed-up face, expressing her dissatisfaction. Maeve and Sito were originally here, but for some reason, Maeve's holy grail had an abnormality. It directly used Maeve and Sito's body as a sacrifice to summon the demon god pillar. Because Sito's spiritual base was damaged, she was equivalent to half a servant, so Maeve acted as the other half and was embedded in the demon god pillar. Before her magic was absorbed, Maeve heard the voice of the demon god pillar. That was what Flawless said at that time. Ha! I'm back. Wait for your death, Wu Ming. Then Maeve fainted. Wu Ming told Maeve his real name. So according to Maeve's own judgment, she knew one thing, that was Flawless was Wu Ming's enemy. So Maeve originally wanted to pretend that she didn't know Wu Ming, in case Flawless threatened Wu Ming with her. But you directly called my name. Isn't this telling it that I'm very important to you? Although she was complaining, Maeve was smiling. That was joy. It was impossible for Wu Ming not to know this, but Wu Ming still called Maeve, exposing their relationship and giving Flawless an opportunity. Because Wu Ming was worried about Maeve, it was impossible for him to not recognize Maeve because of threats. Even if I did that, Flawless wouldn't be fooled. After all, Flawless had said before that since Wu Ming came to this singularity, Flawless had been monitoring Wu Ming. Perhaps Flawless already knew about the relationship between Wu Ming and Maeve, and revealing half of Maeve's body was probably premeditated. That's right. It's because I know about your relationship that I devoured the guy whose spiritual base was about to die and this woman. In this way, I can expose her outside and use it to threaten you, Dragon of Origin Wu Ming. Facing such a situation, Wu Ming's hand holding the divine blade of salvation couldn't help but tighten. Trouble. Chapter 555. Wu Ming, who was being threatened, did not dare to unleash the light cannon attack of the divine blade of salvation on Flawless because it would directly send Maeve and Flawless away. Therefore, Wu Ming could only suppress the power of the divine blade of salvation and deal with the demon god pillar with just a slash. Swish. A slash mixed with lightning and holy light instantly cut off many of the tentacles that were attacking him. Even the body of the demon god pillar was slashed by the flash of the blade. However, the self-healing ability of the demon god pillar that had obtained greater power was even more powerful. In just a few seconds, the cracked body healed and the tentacles grew out. However, it could be seen that even if the power was deliberately suppressed, the divine blade of salvation was still the divine blade of salvation. The holy sword that could split a star was not just for show. It could be said that the divine blade of salvation could not only be classified as a divine blade of salvation, but also as a divine blade of salvation. Such a powerful divine weapon, even if the power was suppressed, was still not something that the demon god pillar could resist. Originally, it should have been like that. However, because Flawless had obtained the power of their king, his strength had also increased by a level. This created a very awkward situation. Flawless could not hurt Wu Ming, and Wu Ming could not do anything to the demon god pillar even if he showed mercy. For example, the original divine blade of salvation that Wu Ming used had a strength of 100. Currently, the divine blade of salvation that was transformed from the Holy Grail and Rama's divine blade of salvation had a strength of 80. Due to the deliberate suppression, the strength was reduced to 50. The original strength of the demon god pillar, Flawless, was 30. After obtaining the power of the Magic King, the strength became 50. In this way, the two of them were equal. However, the pure data was only used as a general reference. It could not accurately express anything. It only meant that the two of them were unable to defeat each other. As expected, even after obtaining the power of our king, it is still too weak when facing the Dragon of Origin. Flawless said calmly. Indeed, as the king of Flawless had said, there was nothing to be afraid of with an immature dragon of origin. Even though Wuming was very powerful in the eyes of many people, he paled in comparison to the magic king who had obtained the power of the black soil. It was true that an adult origin dragon would possess unparalleled power. It could travel through time, move mountains and fill seas, reverse time, and even bring the dead back to life. However, the prerequisite was that Wuming had to stay inside the origin and use its power. That was because the root dragon was a unique creature that was neither human, beast, nor god, that was born from the world root that gave birth to all worlds, which was why it had to borrow the power of the root to achieve invincibility. Although it was called the origin dragon and had the appearance of a dragon, the origin dragon wasn't actually a dragon. The reason Wuming had the characteristics and drawbacks of a dragon was because Wuming's birthplace had shifted from the great origin to the origin of the M-shaped moon. To put it simply, he was tainted with an impure bloodline. However, Wuming had already been baptized inside the great origin, and had basically eliminated the drawbacks of dragons. It could be said that as long as Wuming continued to be baptized by the great origin, he would return to the purest form of the origin dragon. After that, as long as he went through the baptism of the great origin, an adult origin dragon could be said to be truly invincible. For now, as long as Wuming stayed inside the great origin, he would be invincible inside. For now, Wuming couldn't interfere with other worlds for the time being. Moreover, as long as Wuming left the great origin, Wuming's chances of losing against someone like the Magic King, who could be said to be a cheat, were definitely higher than his chances of winning against him. In other words, Wuming could only rely on his own power as a dragon of origin. He couldn't threaten anyone else at all. Whether it was Darius, Romo, Arthas, or even the Magic King, Wuming couldn't defeat any of them. However, Wuming himself knew this, which was why Wuming had resorted to using external objects. In the past, the queen of the demonic realm, Skaha, who had great wisdom, had also noticed this drawback of Wuming's. That was why she had let Wuming use the process of sublimation to obtain a noble artifact. The true strength of a servant wasn't their martial arts or anything else, but their noble artifacts, which were killer moves that could instantly turn the situation around. Not only that, but there were also many treasures that had rather miraculous functions, such as resurrecting the dead and reversing time, and so on. All in all, since one's body was weak, one should use powerful weapons. That was how humans had developed. There was no reason why a higher-level species like humans couldn't understand this principle, and that was what Wuming did. In the beginning, Wuming's sublimation was very difficult, and it required a lot of effort. Now that Wuming had the power of origin, it was no longer so strenuous for him. He could easily sublimate items or abilities into a noble artifact. However, Wuming would not casually turn a weapon into a noble artifact. After all, even if he really turned a stone into a noble artifact, it would be the lowest grade of grady noble artifact. It wasn't that he couldn't upgrade it, but he didn't know how long it would take. Then, the ordinary stone would become a divine stone. Therefore, if possible, Wuming would not simply obtain a noble artifact. In fact, Wuming did not deliberately obtain a noble artifact. For example, the Divine Blade of Salvation. That was the artifact that Wuming obtained after defeating Rama, who was the last hope, and inheriting the identity of the last king through trickery. Even if the Sword of Salvation in Wuming's hand was a weakened version of the Holy Sword, its power was not something that Flawless could block. As it had experienced this personally, Flawless did not completely devour Maeve to threaten Wuming. However, Flawless knew that it would lose if it kept defending. Therefore, it was ready to make peace. Forget it, Dragon of Origin. My purpose is just to see Chaldea and the rest. In fact, I don't have the intention to fight you at all. Flawless' tentacles stopped dancing as if they were still in the air. The devil mist and the heat rays in its eyes dissipated. It seemed like it was really ready to make peace. As long as you promise not to interfere with the singularity anymore, I'll let this woman go and allow you to help Chaldea repair the singularity. What do you think? After hearing what Flawless said, Wuming slowly lowered the Sword of Salvation. The lightning and holy light on the blade gradually disappeared. Then, Wu-ming let out a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, Flawless, even though we've had a lot of dealings, you still don't know me well. Chapter 556. What do you mean? Flawless was confused. You care about her a lot, don't you? I just need you to stop interfering with the next singularity to save her. Isn't that a good deal? Flawless' voice was like a devil's as he continued to tempt Wu-ming. Ha! Wu-ming lowered his head and laughed. It was a mocking laugh. I won't say much nonsense. Let's put it simply. I can't compromise with you, Flawless. Wasn't that a given? For example, if someone stole something from you and made a deal with you, and it was a deal that wasn't beneficial to you, most people wouldn't agree to it. But I'm threatening you, Lord Dragon of Origin, Flawless said with a smile. Although he couldn't see the smile on the giant meat pillar, Wu-ming could feel that Flawless was smiling. Moreover, Flawless was right. Wu-ming was being threatened by Flawless at that moment. If he couldn't get rid of this threat, Wu-ming would always be controlled by others. Wu-ming frowned and held the Savior Divine Sword tightly. At that moment, Wu-ming was quite upset. Ah, Xiaosai, you don't have to be threatened by this guy for me. Do what you want to do. Maeve smiled and the command spell hidden under the white silk gloves disappeared. Feeling the magical power invading his body, Wu-ming's heart skipped a beat. Maeve was using the command spell. Fortunately, Wu-ming had the ability to resist the command spell. Traveler. A+, the effect was equivalent to a solo A+, and it could greatly resist the command spell of the master. Wu-ming was able to withstand the power of the command incantation without any pressure. However, that was only the power of the command spell. If it were 2 strokes, it wouldn't be so easy. Xiaosai, use your strongest attack relic on me with all your might. Bang. This was the sound of Wu-ming's other hand suddenly landing on the Sword of Salvation. Wu-ming held the Savior Divine Sword with both hands and looked up at Maeve. Maeve, don't do anything stupid. Flawless also realized that something was wrong. He quickly used his tentacles to wrap Maeve up and prevent her from meeting Wu-ming. However, it was too late for Flawless. Finally, love me with all your might, my lover, Surrender. Maeve smiled as she looked at Wu-ming lovingly. The last command incantation was used by Mai Fu. At this moment, Wu-ming and Mai Fu no longer had a master-slave relationship, but a pure relationship between a young girl and her lover. Afterwards, Mai Fu was wrapped up by the tentacles of the demon god pillar, and fused into the demon god pillar. Wait a minute. Don't come over. Flawless shouted in fear. Excalibur. The third command spell allowed Wu-ming to unleash his strongest attack. Boundless white holy light, mixed with sacred golden lightning, formed a cannon of light that was like a heavenly punishment, covering the White House. Facing Wu-ming's Savior Divine Sword, Flawless fell into silence and gave up struggling. It was not only because Flawless knew that he could not block it, but also because he was thinking. Even Flawless did not expect Maeve to be so determined to let her lover kill him. Perhaps this was the pride of being a hero, and a heroic spirit. Then Flawless lost consciousness. After the white light, the White House no longer existed. North of Washington, north of the Appalachian Mountains, there was a huge gully that connected to the Arctic Ocean. Endless seawater poured in, as if it was reflecting someone's anger. The holy light and lightning were still rippling in the seawater. Wu-ming's attack directly cut the continent in half. The energy impact of the Savior Divine Sword was not something that could be blocked by a singularity. After all, the power to split a star was not fake. If it weren't for Wu-ming releasing his own attack and weakening the command spell's effect, perhaps the entire singularity would be shattered in the end. With his eyes closed, Wu-ming took a long breath. Although the servants were the avatars of the heroic spirits, it was still a bit uncomfortable for Wu-ming to kill the lover he had just accepted. Wu-ming had never treated the lives of the servants as lives. This was the same as Gadatsi and Matthew. They would not ignore the life and death of the singularity residents. Even if Gadatsi knew that they would be repaired by history. Although this was a lie, it could be seen that Gadatsi and Matthew's hearts were noble. No, it should be said that that was what humans should be. At least, Wu-ming believed that this was what a human was, a real human. Although Wu-ming was not a human, it did not prevent Wu-ming from having the precious character of a human. Maeve. Wu Ming said Maeve's name with a little sadness. From this, it could be seen how deep Maeve's love for Wu Ming was. Without hesitation, she used the command spell to force Wu Ming to kill her along with the demon god pillar. Even if she was just an avatar, who would want to be killed by the person she loved? This courage, this persistence, this dedication, completely explained that even if Maeve was in the ranks of the anti-hero, she also had the pride of a hero. Then, let's meet again in the future, my Fu. Wu Ming said softly to the original demon god pillar, as if he was whispering to it. Then Wu Ming walked over. As the sacrifice to summon the demon god pillar, the servant had an advantage. That was no matter how powerful the demon god pillar was, how fierce the attack was, the servant as the sacrifice would always be safe. However, after the demon god pillar disappeared, the servant as the sacrifice would withdraw in a short time as if their spiritual base and magic power had been drained. This was the case with G of Justice, and the blonde Roman girl, because of the protection of the Holy Grail, did not directly withdraw. So this time, the servant as the sacrifice of the demon god pillar would be the same. It would definitely withdraw in a very short time. Wu Ming walked to Sito's side. Sito's spiritual base was about to be broken, and at this moment, his body was already faintly discernible. It could be said that at this moment, if not for the protection of the Celtic Holy Grail that fell after Floros withdrew, Sito would have already left. As far as the current situation was concerned, once the Holy Grail left Sito, Sito would immediately disappear. Now the Holy Grail was just hanging on to Sito's last breath. However, fortunately, there was the Holy Grail hanging on to Sito's last breath. In this way, Wu Ming was confident that he could save Sito. Wu Ming suddenly had a guess. Let's give it a try. With that, Wu Ming took out another Greek Holy Grail that he obtained from Ison in his protective shell space, and together with the Celtic Holy Grail, he placed it on Sito's body that was about to dissipate. The light of the Greek Holy Grail appeared, and began to cooperate with the Celtic Holy Grail to nourish Sito's spiritual base. Immediately afterward, Wu Ming stretched out his two hands, placed them on the two Holy Grails, and began to inject magic power into the Holy Grail. At this moment, the halo in the sky changed, and a beam of light fell, in the direction of. Where is Tachika and the others? Chapter 557. In just an instant, the light beam shot by the aperture landed near Alexandria. That direction was definitely the direction of Gadotsi and the others. Wu Ming was willing to bet. However, Wu Ming did not do anything else, and continued to infuse magic into the two Holy Grails. Fortunately, Wu Ming was cautious and had already given the invincible armor that was comparable to Avalon's time to Gadotsi. Therefore, Wu Ming was not worried about the safety of Gadotsi and the others. Why was he not worried about the safety of Gadotsi and the others? That was because Wu Ming had already infused a lot of magic into his precious armor in advance. In the face of danger, it would automatically decompose and form a protective shield. Dong! Ignoring the explosion behind him that was even more intense than the light beam shot by the aperture, Wu Ming focused on healing Sito. The miraculous power of the two Holy Grails and Wu Ming's almost infinite magic was like a good car with good fuel. The effect of 1 + 1 was far greater than 2. After a while, Sito slowly opened her eyes. You are. Sito looked at the young man who was filled with holy light in front of her in confusion. I'm Rama's friend. I was asked by Rama to come and save you. Wu Ming smiled slightly. Sito was asked by Rama to come. This was not a lie, but it was not true either. It could be considered half true and half false. After all, Wu Ming would not be stingy with his power if he could help this couple improve their relationship. Thank you. Although Sito was still weak, she still chose to believe in Wu Ming. Wu Ming's eyes told Sito that he was not lying to her. Moreover, feeling her spiritual base gradually recovering, Sito also believed that Wu Ming was here to save her. Miss Sito, may I ask what your last memory is? I need to know how long you were unconscious. While her body was being healed by the Holy Grail, Sito recalled for a while, and then answered Wu Ming. I remember that my last memory was talking to that unbelievably beautiful big sister, talking to her about her lover. Sito's face gradually turned red as she talked about her girlish thoughts. The lover that Miss Sito was talking about is Rama, right? Wu Ming said softly. Yes. Yes. Sito's voice became softer. He was obviously embarrassed. You two are so loving. I'm so envious. The more Wu Ming spoke, the redder Sito's face became. Wu Ming even suspected that when Sito's face became red to a certain extent, his blood vessels would burst or something. No longer teasing Sito, Wu Ming asked a serious question. Then, who is the lover that the beautiful woman was talking to you about? It was not that Wu Ming suspected Mai Fu. He knew that Mai Fu must be talking about him. Therefore, Wu Ming wanted to know how Mai Fu talked about him and how she loved him. That beautiful big sister Mai Fu, she told me that her lover was a hero that did not lose to Lord Rama. Wu Ming could not help but smile helplessly. This Mai Fu actually called Sito her sister. He saved me when I needed him. After saving the damsel in distress, he did not want to take responsibility. His temperament was volatile, and he could not stay in the same place. However, he was willing to start a war for me. He did not fall for my beauty, but he was able to treat me like family. He was clearly moved, but he still held it in, and in the end, he really left. Sito muttered the words that Mai Fu said when she talked to her. I was so perfect, there were so many men pursuing me, and all of them fell at my feet, but he didn't move at all. I even fell deeply in love with him. It may sound funny, but I still kept my first time for him. Hearing this sentence, Wu Ming was stunned. In his mind, he could not help but think of Mai Fu's sly and slightly blushing face. Although Wu Ming had guessed it, but in front of such a sentence, Wu Ming could not help but be surprised. Wu Ming knew about Queen Mai Fu's promiscuous love before he came to this world. Wu Ming guessed that Mai Fu in this world should also be like that. However, because Wu Ming met Mai Fu when she just came out of her ivory tower, and until Mai Fu died after Wu Ming left, Wu Ming did not see Mai Fu having intimate contact with any man except himself. In other words, Mai Fu was indeed a pure girl. Nature would be suppressed by a stronger desire, and Wu Ming was Mai Fu's stronger desire. Not noticing Wu Ming's abnormality, Sito continued. However, I'm really happy that he was able to accompany me for such a long time. Even if he left and I was attacked by death, I still love him. I hope that he can accept me and not leave me to travel alone. From the looks of it, my years of strategy have finally paid off. Sito's cheeks blushed. It seemed that imitating Mai Fu's tone was a great test for her. After hearing this sentence, Wu Ming smiled helplessly and satisfactorily. Wu Ming suspected that Mai Fu deliberately let Sito say these words to him. However, Mai Fu did not lie, and this was what Wu Ming was satisfied with. Although Wu Ming did not stop the movement of transferring magic power, he did not speak and quietly waited for Sito to continue. However, Sito did not continue and changed the topic. That. Lord Saran, the person Sister Mai Fu was talking about is you, right? Wu Ming didn't say his name, so for Sito to know, it was most likely Mai Fu told Sito Wu Ming's name. She also told Sito about her lover, Wu Ming, in this singularity, and even his appearance. Wu Ming smiled helplessly and then asked Sito, since you know that I'm Saran, you must also know that Mai Fu and I are the leaders of the forces that captured you. Don't you hate us? After all, everyone makes mistakes, and now it was you and Sister Mai Fu who saved me from being used as a sacrifice by the Greek forces. Although Sito was still used as a sacrifice by Floros. Well, take this as my apology to you. Wu Ming nodded and did not persist on this point. That, Lord Saran, Sister Mai Fu also asked me to tell you something. Wu Ming looked at Sito in confusion. Then Sito spoke. Sister Mai Fu said that she will wait for you at the Martyr's Palace, no matter how long it takes. After that, Wu Ming was stunned. Then Wu Ming nodded. I've received the message. Thank you, Miss Sito. That, you don't have to use honorifics, just call me Sito. After all, Lord Saran and Lord Rama are good friends. Wu Ming nodded. Speaking of which, you and Rama are really in love. No wonder he asked me to save you. Then, Sito went silent for a few seconds. There's no such thing, I'm sorry, Lord Rama. Sito's voice was extremely soft. If it were not for Wu Ming's good hearing, he might not have heard Sito's words. Actually, Rama is the same as you. Huh. Sito widened her eyes. One night, Rama was worried about you and had a heart-to-heart talk with me. He told me that he was sorry. Of course it was a lie. Rama did not have a heart-to-heart talk with Wuming. But Wuming, who understood Rama's heart, could naturally infer Rama's love for Sito. In order to let Sito prove his innocence, Rama forced Sito to commit suicide, which made Rama feel guilty. It was also because of this that Rama appeared in the form of a young king. According to Rama's words, it was only at this time. I was the Rama who would do anything for Sito. I was the husband that Sito needed, the Rama who loved her deeply. He repeated the words of Rama to Siddhartha. As a result, Siddhartha, whose face was originally flushed red, began to shed tears. Lord Rama, Sito murmured softly. Then Sito looked at Wuming. Lord Surrender, please agree to my request. Help me pass on a message to Lord Rama. However, before Sito could finish, Wuming interrupted him. No need. So if you want to say it, you can say it yourself. Now you and Rama can meet. Hey. Chapter 558. Wuming's words stunned Sito. Then, Wuming did not explain too much to the shocked Sito. You should go and experience it for yourself. After that, Wuming brought Sito, whose spirit base had been repaired, to Alexandria through the teleportation door and found Rama. Then, Rama and Sito were surprised. After all, as long as the two of them were too close, one of them would gradually weaken until one of them disappeared. In the end, the two of them who gradually got closer found that the two of them did not show any signs of fainting or even disappearing. Sito. My Sito. Lord Rama. Rama and Sito hugged each other. Everyone consciously did not disturb the couple who could never meet each other. Instead, they made space for Rama and Sito. Wuming and the others walked to the side. Facing the doubts of everyone about the attack that could split half the continent, Wuming explained what happened just now. Is that so? I didn't expect the queen to sacrifice herself. Matthew said sadly. For our little eggplant, sacrificing anyone was worth feeling sad. No, it should be said that Matthew would feel sad involuntarily. However, I didn't expect you to break the curse. Godatsi's wrist made a sound. Director, is it fixed again? It's so fast this time. Godatsi made a sound of surprise. The voice from the terminal on Godatsi's wrist was naturally Olga Marie's voice. Then, Olga Marie's virtual projection appeared. Although he did not know the truth, Wuming could more or less guess. The light beam attack just now once again cut off the connection with Chaldea. Now, it seemed that Da Vinci, who was in charge of repairing it, had become more familiar with it. Or it could be said that the communication device gradually became more advanced, and only needed a simple repair. Let's not talk about this first. I also heard my servant just now. Then is it possible that such a situation will happen again? Olga Marie was referring to the nature demon god pillar that automatically appeared with the help of the Holy Grail and the servant. If such a Holy Grail was taken to Chaldea, it was better to be safe than sorry. If a demon god pillar appeared, the fragile Chaldea would be destroyed directly. After all, Chaldea's instruments were just some things that were not very sturdy for servant-level people. If the demon god pillar appeared, they would be done for. You don't have to worry about that. The Celtic Holy Grail and the Greek Holy Grail have already been purified by me with a large amount of mana. There's no possibility of summoning the demon god pillar anymore. As for the Roman Holy Grail, I can do the same to eliminate the threat. As for the Japanese Holy Grail, as for the Holy Grail, as for the Holy Grail. What's wrong, assassin? Godatsi looked at Silent in confusion. The Holy Grail of the Japanese forces has been made into my noble phantasm. Wu Ming scratched his head awkwardly and extended the sword of salvation in front of everyone. Huh? Not only Olga Marie, Godatsi, and Matthew, but even Achilles and Sharon were stunned. Turning the Holy Grail that the servants fought for into his own weapon. It was estimated that only Wu Ming could do such a thing. Of course, I will not take it away. I will give it to you. Huh? This time, everyone was collectively stunned. The servants' noble phantoms were condensed by magic power. It could be said that after the servant left, the noble phantoms could not be preserved. But listening to Wu Ming's words, it did not seem like he wanted to keep it. This is a noble phantoms made with the Holy Grail as the raw material. Naturally, it can be preserved. Wu Ming explained very considerately. Indeed, if it is a noble phantoms made with the Holy Grail as the raw material, it is possible to leave the servant's body. As a scholar, Sharon strictly explained to everyone. He was even more certain that Wu Ming's words were correct. By the way, the attack just now did not cause any harm to you, right? Wu Ming looked at Gudatzi. We are completely fine. Gudatzi, who was wearing her armor, excitedly hugged Wu Ming's arm and shook it. Looking at Gudatzi's cheerful personality, as a teacher, Sharon also smiled. Because of your noble phantoms, the enemy's attack was completely blocked. Not only us, but even the surrounding land was unharmed. I can only say that it is great that this land was not ravaged again. Roman, who was in the corner of Olga Marie's projection, said weakly. I have to say, even if I have an immortal body, I can't block it. Achilles carried his gun with both hands and looked unhappy. That's why I taught you not to be too arrogant, Achilles. Sharon once again became a teacher. Yes, I understand. Looking at everyone chatting, Matthew felt very warm, but Matthew noticed that Wu Ming was thinking about something. That, Senpai Cylinder, are you thinking about something? When Matthew said this, Gudatzi and the others also looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming looked at everyone, then said what he was thinking. Well, for the attack just now, I don't think it was released by Floros before he died. Wu Ming's words made everyone feel a sense of crisis. Do you mean that it was released by the Magic King himself? Olga Marie said with some uncertainty. Looking at the slightly embarrassed Roman, Wu Ming said, after all, that's the Magic King's noble phantasm. It's not strange for the Magic King to use it himself. However, because the intensity of the light beam was similar to the one released by Floros, everyone thought that it was released by Floros before he died. But as the one who killed Floros, Wu Ming knew that the light beam was released after Floros left the stage. In short, I will go look for him later. Wu Ming said calmly. Then the scene fell into silence. Only Sharon and Achilles, one of them looked helpless, and the other crossed his arms in front of his chest. There was also Attila, who had been standing beside Wu Ming without any unnecessary actions or words since he came back. Other than Achilles and Sharon, everyone else cried out in shock. Wait a minute, Cylinder, are you going to look for the Magic King directly? Roman's face instantly appeared on the virtual projection screen. Go away. Olga Marie pushed Roman away. You're not really going to look for the Magic King directly, are you? Olga Marie looked worried. Directly looking for the Magic King or something, as expected, is still a little rushed. Gudatzi smiled with a helpless expression. Senior Cylinder, that's too dangerous. Matthew looked at Wu Ming with a serious face. Looking at everyone trying to persuade him, Wu Ming was helpless. Don't think that I'm too weak. After all, I'm someone with a special identity. After Wu Ming said that, Gudatzi, Matthew, and Olga Marie remembered that Wu Ming had fought the Magic King in the underground of the fourth singularity. Who exactly was he? In an instant, this question filled the minds of Gudatzi, Matthew, and Olga Marie. Chapter 559. As for my identity, I will slowly tell you in the future. Of course, if someone who knows my identity wants to tell you, I won't stop them. After that, Wu Ming secretly looked at Roman. This made Roman sweat profusely. In short, Tachika and Matthew should hurry back to Chaldea to rest. After all, the sixth singularity isn't something these singularities can compare to. Wu Ming smiled and kept them in suspense. After fiercely staring at Wu Ming, Olga Marie nodded. So Tachika, Matthew, get ready for ray shift. Let's get to work, Roman. Roman, who was reprimanded by Olga Marie, quickly left and prepared for ray shift. Gudatzi nodded, indicating that she was ready, but as if she thought of something, Gudatzi looked at Olga Marie. Director, Fufu and Miss Pamilia are still in Riverton. We have to go back to pick them up. Matthew also nodded. He was worried about Fufu, but every time Fufu was in danger, no one knew where to hide. In the end, it was always able to follow Gudatzi and Matthew back to Chaldea. You don't have to worry about this. As a servant, as long as the world starts to repair, Pamilia will be automatically ejected and forced to transfer Rayshift. But that creature called Fufu. Wuming touched his chin and entered into a state of thinking. I'm not sure if it can be ejected. Let me go to Riverton. Wuming directly made the decision. Speaking of which, I'm quite interested in Fo, who Mashu has been talking about but I haven't seen. After saying that, Wuming opened the portal and walked in. I'll be right back. A moment later, a vampire girl who was still sleeping soundly and a creature that looked like a cat, a dog, a squirrel, and a squirrel were brought over by Wuming. Fufu. The little creature named Fufu kept struggling in Wuming's hands, as if Wuming was a demon. Wuming loosened his grip on Fufu, and Fufu immediately ran and jumped onto Matthew's shoulder, hiding in Matthew's short hair and shivering. Fufu, are you okay? Matthew stroked Fufu's body with concern. This little guy wanted to run when it saw me. Fortunately, I was fast and caught it off guard. Otherwise, it really would have escaped. Wuming looked at Fufu with a playful look, which made Fufu hide even more in Matthew's hair. It can be said that the only time Wuming met Fufu was at the Winterwood City Singularity, when Gadatsi and Matthew were about to leave. At that time, Fufu suddenly ran out of nowhere, then quickly jumped onto Matthew and hid behind Matthew's short hair. At that time, Wuming had already found that this creature was hiding from him, so he was quite interested in it. However, Wuming always felt that it was familiar, but he couldn't remember it. But because Gadatsi and Matthew were about to be transferred by Lingzi at that time, Wuming also suppressed his interest. Now Wuming finally knew. Wasn't Fufu the cat demon named Cassipalug that he once killed in Britain? It seemed that the cat demon was not completely killed, but in the end, it seemed to have been adopted by Merlin. Fufu, don't be afraid, Senpai Celander is not a bad person, Matthew comforted while stroking Fufu hiding behind his neck with one hand. However, Fufu was still scared to death and refused to come out from behind Matthew's neck. However, Wuming was not surprised. After all, Fufu was facing someone who almost killed him. Of course, Fufu would be scared. Not only that, Wuming, who had the origin force, could also see the nature of Fufu, just like how Wuming could see the nature of Roman at a glance. Fufu was one of the fourth beast 4, that held the principle of comparison. Strictly speaking, if Fufu grew up, it would be a creature on the level of Tiamat. Although Wuming did not think that the cat demon that he had defeated before was comparable to Tiamat, Wuming did not think that the cat demon that he had defeated before was comparable to Tiamat. Now Fufu in Wuming's eyes was like Wuming in the eyes of the Magic King who had obtained the origin force. They were both immature existences. Wuming now understood why he could not see Fufu. It was because Fufu had been trying to avoid him. Not only because Wuming was once an enemy, but also because Fufu, or one of the fourth beast, loved and protected humans. Wuming, who loved and protected humans, was a natural enemy. Fufu, who had grown up a little, could not defeat Wuming. Now Fufu, who had not grown at all, was not Wuming's opponent. It did not mean that an ordinary servant could kill it. After all, no matter how useless a dragon was, it was still a dragon. Ordinary people could not tease a dragon like the saying, "A dragon in the shallows will be teased by a shrimp." However, the reason why Fufu became like this was all thanks to Matthew. The fourth beast would absorb the evil characteristics around it and evolve into a beast. As long as the fourth beast stayed in human society, it would absorb the negative substances of human society and evolve into a terrifying beast. Fufu, who was only with Matthew all year round, was completely unable to absorb the evil information of the outside world. The result was obvious. Matthew did not have the evil of human beings that Fufu needed, but the good of human beings. Therefore, Fufu was still in the most ordinary form. However, this was also good. If it went on like this, the fourth beast would be defeated sooner or later, and it would be effortless. Sure enough, Matthew is a good boy. Wuming smiled gently. But this made Matthew a little overwhelmed. Wuming did not explain, and just shook his head. Well, let's leave quickly. I still have to find that guy. Gadatsi and Matthew looked at the surviving servants. I am waiting for your summon, Tachika. I will teach you a good lesson as your teacher, Sharon said with a smile. No problem, teacher. Gadatsi saluted playfully. Yes, summon me too. Although I am not as good as this guy, I am still very strong. Achilles looked at Wu Ming, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. This made Wu Ming smile a little helplessly. If possible, can you let me and Sito go with you? At this time, Rama and Sito came over. Chapter 560. Go together? Gudatsi was puzzled. Yes. Romo nodded and then looked at Wu Ming. Thanks to my friend, I can now reunite with Sito. I'm really grateful to you, my friend. Romo looked at Wu Ming gratefully. Thank you, Master Cylinder. Sito did the same. He looked at Wu Ming with a grateful expression. But it seems that it's because of the effect of the Holy Grail that I and Sito can be together. The Holy Grail doesn't belong to me and Sito. And if I and Sito are separated again, I'm afraid we won't have the chance to get along like this. So, I and Sito are considering whether we can go together. It was not easy for a couple to be summoned together, not to mention that both of them still had the curse on them even after they became heroic spirits. After all, this was the curse that had troubled Romo and Sito for a long time. Only a miracle like the Holy Grail could make this curse disappear temporarily. In this way, Gudatsi, who accepted Romo and Sito's proposal, could not only bring the Holy Grail back to Chaldea, but also let Sito and Romo continue to reunite, and also increase the strength of Chaldea's servants. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Why wouldn't he do it? Gudatsi and Matthew looked at each other, and then looked at Olga Marie. Well, if we use a special method to mark Romo and Sito, and then use the method of summoning servants, it's not impossible to summon the 2 of you from this singularity. Olga Marie pondered as she began to mark the spirit bases of Rama and Sito. You 2 stand over here. Then, while Romo and Sito were accepting the spiritual base mark, Gudatsi and Matthew looked at Wu Ming again. I'm the one who prepared the Holy Grail for you. You can do whatever you want with it. Wu Ming said with a smile. Besides, Olga has begun to mark Rama and Sito's spiritual base. She is going to send them to Chaldea. Why are you still asking me? Wu Ming joked. Hearing Wu Ming's words, Gudatsi and Matthew both laughed. After all, Assassin helped us get the Holy Grail, so we have to ask. You little guy. Wu Ming smiled helplessly and touched Gudatsi and Matthew's little head, messing up their hair. Why am I touched? Matthew said weakly. At this time Olga Marie suddenly spoke. It's done. As expected, marking a servant's spiritual base is nothing to me. Olga Marie proudly said, raising her neck like a white swan. Yes, Olga is the best. Wu Ming smiled as if he was praising a child. Although it was not easy to mark a servant with the Holy Grail in their body, it was not difficult. It could be said that if it was Roman, he could also do something like marking a servant who took the initiative to accept the mark. All in all, as long as Tachika comes back, immediately summon Romo and Sito. Then they can be brought to Chaldea. Then Gudatsi looked at Romo and Sito. Then welcome in advance Mr. Romo, Miss Sito. Romo and Sito also looked at each other and smiled. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. At this time, Wu Ming quietly came to the side of Olga Marie's projection and asked, Is there any problem? Let the servants go to Chaldea. Of course there is no problem. Chaldea has a lot of servants who accepted Tachika's summon. Olga Marie said that there was no problem at all. This made Wu Ming stunned. When he went to Chaldea, he didn't see any other servants. As if she saw Wu Ming's thoughts, Olga Marie smiled helplessly. I heard from Romani that you only stayed in the control room for a short while. Did you go out and see? Chaldea prepared a lot of servants' rooms, and there were a lot of servants living there. Wu Ming smiled awkwardly. Indeed, although he went to Chaldea, he only stayed for a short time, and he only stayed in the control room for a short while. At this time Roman's voice came. Reiki transfer is ready. Tachika, Matthew, get ready. Everyone immediately made way for several people who were preparing for Reiki transfer. And this. Wu Ming picked up the Holy Grail that was still on the unconscious Roman blonde girl next to him. Anyway, it would disappear later, so it didn't matter. With a gentle toss, Wu Ming threw the Roman Holy Grail into Gudatsi's hand. Then a lot of magic appeared around Gudatsi, Matthew, and Pamilia, who was still sleeping. That was the precursor of Reiki transfer. Then, Wuming threw the Sword of Salvation in his hand, and the Sword of Salvation was directly attached to the ordinary knight sword on Matthew's waist. The armor may disappear after returning to Chaldea, but this Holy Grail made of Holy Grail will not disappear. You can use it, or use it as a relic to summon me. In short, you can use it as much as you want. Gudatsi touched the armor on her body. Matthew touched the sword on his waist, and nodded at Wuming. Then Gudatsi and others turned into light and disappeared. As soon as Gudatsi and others left, Achilles and Karen's body began to glow. Ah, I'm running out of magic. Sharon touched the back of his head in embarrassment. I'll take my leave first. With that, Sharon turned into magic and disappeared. Looks like I'll have to disappear early, just like my teacher. Then, whether it's Sodric or Celander, let's have a good fight next time. No problem, let's have a good fight next time, Achilles. Wuming smiled at Achilles. Then Achilles disappeared as well. Then the unconscious Roman blonde girl who had lost the protection of the Holy Grail also turned into light, and disappeared after Achilles disappeared. At the same time, rays of magic light rose from other parts of the continent, which was a sign that the followers had left. Perhaps only Attila and Wuming were left in this singularity. At this moment, the entire singularity began to shake violently. This was the sign that the singularity that had lost the Holy Grail was beginning to be repaired by the power of historical correction. Why don't you want to say goodbye, my friend? Wuming smiled at Attila. There's no need. Attila said coldly. But the silence at the beginning meant that Attila's heart was not cold. That's true. It won't be long before I release you. This is the promise I made to you as your first friend. Attila looked at Wuming and did not speak. Wuming did not speak to Attila again. The two quietly watched the singularity begin to be repaired, and waited for their departure. Then Attila's body began to glow. Then I'll wait. Wuming looked around, but there was no one around. Wuming stretched. Then, it's time to find the fake magic king. Chapter 561. In the source of chaos, traces of light came from the center of the chaos. It was strange. It was chaos, but there was a center, which gave off a rather contradictory feeling. In the center of the light, a giant dragon was sleeping on the platform formed in the center. The light was emitted from the giant dragon's body. Beside the giant dragon, there was a smaller dragon with 4 pairs of horns on its head. Interestingly, apart from the size and number of horns, the smaller dragon was exactly the same as the giant dragon. The little dragon was casually walking around the giant dragon, but it never left the giant dragon's surroundings. It just kept walking like this. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the eyes of the smaller dragon did not have any consciousness. Although it was walking freely, it gave off the feeling of a puppet. After an unknown period of time, the smaller dragon was still walking around, but the giant dragon woke up from its deep sleep. Wuming slowly opened his eyes, and an unknown aura spread in all directions as Wuming opened his eyes. It was the coercion that belonged to the origin dragon. If there were fantasy breeds around at this moment, they would be immediately suppressed by Wuming's coercion. After sensing the natural release of power, Wuming shook his head slightly. I lost my dragon's coercion, but I gained a higher level of coercion. Wuming slowly propped up his body and opened his huge dragon mouth. Roar! A roar that was different from a dragon's but louder than a dragon's echoed throughout the entire source. Then, as though a bright lamp had been placed in the chaos, the entire source was instantly covered by the light emitted from Wuming's body. Master, are you awake? At that moment, a voice came from the top of the smaller dragon's head. At that moment, the smaller dragon's body was no longer moving. Instead, it stopped steadily beside Wuming like a standby machine. Collis, it's been hard on you. Wuming supported his upper body and stretched. His huge dragon head looked at the small dragon that looked exactly the same as him. To be precise, he was looking at the top of the smaller dragon's head. There's no such thing, Master. Although a lot of time may have passed on your side, only a short while has passed on Collis's side. While speaking, the smaller dragon's pair of dragon horns suddenly detached from its head. Then the dragon horns grew larger and merged with Wuming's head, turning him into a giant dragon with 4 horns. Oh, could it be that you've used my body to adjust the time of the root of everything? The crimson eyes were filled with surprise. Wuming had no choice but to create this small dragon because Wuming's main body had to guard this place to prevent a sneak attack. If Wuming wanted to go out, he had to use this backup body. However, this backup body was created by Wuming using his own flesh and blood, as well as other materials, as well as origin energy. In that case, it was not strange that this body had Wuming's main body's abilities. However, Wuming had never done much research on this body, so it was only used as a backup body when Wuming went out. But now, it seemed that this backup body's abilities had been developed by Kalis. She could actually adjust the time difference between the outside world and the source. "Master, please punish me," Kalis said in a low voice. Wuming naturally knew what Kalis was referring to. She had developed his backup body without his permission. Like a paranoid person, he would definitely suspect that Kalis was trying to replace Wuming. After all, apart from combat strength and adaptability to time and space, Wuming's backup body was no different from Wuming's main body. In other words, it was not impossible for Kalis to use Wuming's backup body to betray Wuming. However, Wuming did not think so. Putting aside the fact that Kalis was destined to be unable to rebel against him, Wuming believed that Kalis would not betray him. Time had proven that the bond between Wuming and Kalis was unbreakable. Although Kalis was a magic costume, Wuming did not treat her as a magic costume. Instead, he treated her as a friend, partner, or subordinate. In short, she was someone he could trust. "Why would I punish you, Kalis? I can't thank you enough." Wuming shook his head. "Xiao En is stubborn. If I don't take the initiative to talk to her, she will treat herself as a weapon. As for you, you often take the initiative to talk to me. You even protect me when I use my servant's body to go out. Why would I punish someone like you?" Wuming extended his dragon claw and touched Kalis. "You're too kind, master. This is what I should do," Dragonhorn said softly. However, he felt that Kalis was enjoying it. After hearing Wuming's words, the chain seemed to be dissatisfied with Wuming's words. It resisted slightly and gently knocked on Wuming's body. However, to Wuming it was simply acting coquettishly. After comforting Enkidu, Wuming continued. "Besides, you helped me develop this body's ability. I can't be happier. Why would I punish you? If this body could be like Wuming, then it could replace Wuming to guard the house, and Wuming's body could go out. Who doesn't want to use their original body? Who wants to use a fake body every day? Then the next time I go out with my original body, Kalis will come with me," Wuming suddenly said. "Thank you, master." Although Kalis was a magic costume, she also had her own thoughts. She could see that Wuming wanted to make up for the loneliness in her heart. "After all, you are not my slave. Don't talk about letting you stay here every day. If it were me, I would be bored to death." Wuming's dragon face showed a helpless expression. Wuming believed that Kalis was too lonely. That was why she worked so hard to develop this body, which diverged the time between the origin and the outside world. This way, she would be able to see Wuming soon and wouldn't have to wait for a long time. Although Wuming didn't think it would be a long time. After all, Wuming only spent a few days or so to go out of the singularity with the body of a servant. However, for Kalis, even if she didn't see Wuming for a day, she would still be lonely. She was a sentient tool that was determined to have a master when she was just born. After she gained the master's favor and decided to serve the master forever, she realized that the master would leave her side every few days. Even if she had a lot of knowledge and experience, after losing the master that she could rely on, Kalis, who was actually less than a year old, couldn't accept it, even if it was just for a short period of time. With that thought in mind, Kalis successfully controlled Wuming's spare body, and developed the ability to control the internal of the origin. Simply put, it turned from an ordinary robot in the lab into a central controller. "Then let me test the performance of this body." Saying so, Wuming put his claws on the spare body that was smaller than his original body. In an instant, the spare body's eyes emitted a bright light, making people feel as if they had been turned on. Chapter 562. Two dragons, one large and one small, stood on the platform inside the origin. The small dragon was moving about while the large dragon stood silently on the platform. Wu Ming's consciousness was still in his main body. The small dragon could move about because it was under Wu Ming's control. After all, the small dragon could be considered as Wu Ming's clone. With his spirit power rapidly developing, Wu Ming could already separate a sliver of consciousness from his main body and enter this body. Roar! The small dragon let out a furious roar. In an instant, the primal chaos around him rippled, and several transparent spheres appeared. On each ball, there were constantly changing images. These spheres represented every world that Wu Ming had been to. The small dragon pointed with its finger. One of the spheres floated over and arrived before the large dragon. Upon closer inspection, the image on the sphere was of some elementary school students in class. Has Mayu already started school? She should be in the 6th grade now. Has it been so long? Wu Ming sighed. I clearly said that I would return soon. I can only say that I didn't expect the enemy to be so difficult to deal with. Wu Ming looked at Mayu, who was listening attentively in class with nostalgia. Ripples appeared in his eyes as if he was reminiscing about his past experiences with Mayu. Coming back to his senses, Wu Ming looked to the side. He saw the sleeping Ilya and Chloe, who was trying to tease Ilya. These two little fellows. Wu Ming shook his head with a smile. Fortunately, I have the means to control the passage of time. I was afraid that Mayu would have become adults by the time I returned. As Wu Ming spoke, the small dragon pointed with its finger again. The sphere that represented Mayu's world fluctuated slightly. This way, the passage of time in Mayu's world will be extremely slow compared to other worlds. This way, Wu Ming would be able to return before Mayu's 6th grade winter break and fulfill his promise with Mayu. Then Wu Ming controlled the small giant dragon to bring the balls of the other worlds that Wu Ming had been to before to Wu Ming. Wu Ming looked at the world of the god slayers, paying attention to the daily lives of his god of disobedience's minions and his beautiful female knights, and then felt a little helpless. As expected, the gods of disobedience are indeed the gods of disobedience. They seem to have settled down, but they still caused a lot of trouble, and Wu Ming switched to an image on the ball. The person on it was Wu Ming's authoritative spirit bead, Neza. Basically, it's this guy who leads them, Wu Ming said with a gloomy expression. In the world of the god slayer Neza, who was about to go to Italy to steal the sword of the King of Swords, Salvatore Toni, suddenly felt a chill on his back. After looking around cautiously, Neza decided not to go in. Wu Ming smiled helplessly, shook his head, and then looked at the other worlds. In the big underground tomb of Nazalik, Demiurgos and Yerbade were discussing something. It seemed that they had listened to Wu Ming's words and did not go out for the time being. They were trying to hide in the big tomb as much as possible. Although I don't care much about good or evil, I still can't help but worry about these guys with -500 justice points. Wu Ming said helplessly. Let's just pause the time of this world. After all, it could be shut down later. There was no difference. With that thought in mind, Wu Ming controlled the small giant dragon to tap lightly on the ball that represented this world. In just an instant, the ball seemed to be frozen with a layer of ice. The people in the ball, or rather the world, were completely frozen. It was not an ordinary freeze, but a freeze that interfered with time and space. Therefore, the people in that world did not notice it. Let's just do the same to the other worlds. Wu Ming smiled irresponsibly. Although it was indeed very convenient, it was almost useless in the world where the Magic King was. The reason Wu Ming could affect Mayu's world was because Wu Ming had protected that world before he left. Now, the world where the fake Magic King was in was no longer under Wu Ming's control. The fake Magic King, who had grasped part of the power of Source, was not to be trifled with. If not for the fact that the fake Magic King could not reach the major Source, he would have probably replaced Wu Ming long ago. At that time, the fake Magic King could really be said to be invincible. But now, although I can't say I'm invincible, I'm not afraid of you. Wu Ming's dragon face showed a smile. Immediately after, Wu Ming adjusted the flow of time in the world of the Skywings. Of course, when he said, let's just do the same to the other worlds, it was a joke. Then Wuming controlled this body to lie in the center of the platform and began to act as a guardian. As for Wuming, he prepared to leave the major source and go on a trip. Kalas, I need to find trouble with an imposter. You. But before Wuming could finish, Kalas interrupted him. I will follow Master. Kalas did not give Wuming a chance and continued. Master's backup body already has the ability to protect the major source, so I don't need to stay with it anymore. Also, Master, you said before that the next time you leave with your main body, you'll take me with you. You can't go back on your word. Wuming smiled helplessly. Was he reaping what he sowed? All right. After all, we haven't worked together for a long time. I'm really not used to not having your help. After all, there were many things that required knowledge, and without Kalas, Wuming did not know what to say. After all, ever since Wuming obtained the nameless spellbook, he had stopped learning magic. After having Kalas, he had left everything that needed to be recorded to Kalas. From the looks of it, Wuming was very lazy. It could be said that if it was not for the nameless spellbook, Wuming would have even recorded the methods of using magic in Kalas' database. Kalas had not only complained about Wuming's laziness, but Wuming had always brushed her off with the same answer. After all, it's very hard on me. With Kalas here, I don't have to work so hard to remember things. Would Kalas leave me? Then, these words made Kalas feel insulted, and Kalas furiously retorted. How could that be? I'll always follow Master, until eternity. And then there was no and then. Then let's go together, my Kalas. Yes, my master, my lord. Then there was only a small dragon left in the major source. However, judging from the dangerous glint in its eyes from time to time, this place was not without threats even after Wuming left. At the very least, it could be seen from the fact that the black mud outside the route did not have the guts to enter after Wuming left. Chapter 563. Outside the M-shaped moon world, an ancient and noble temple that occupied a huge area was located in the void. This was a place located outside of time and space. Its name was the Crown Time Temple. Although it was a temple, it was an open-air venue. If someone stood anywhere in this temple, they only needed to raise their head to see the mysterious scene of the endless universe. On a platform located at the highest point of the innermost part of the temple, a throne comparable to the giant stone throne on the 10th floor of Nazalek was located there. On this throne, there was a man with one hand supporting his chin, and the other on his abdomen. He was taking a nap with his eyes closed. Suddenly the man spoke. Did Floros fail? The man who suddenly spoke seemed to be talking to someone. It was as if he was talking to himself. It doesn't matter. I already guessed the result. Even if you have my power, it's not realistic to deal with him. As he spoke, the man opened his eyes. His scarlet pupils seemed to contain supreme wisdom, but his eyes made people feel cold. I feel it. He's coming. As he spoke, the man looked up at the void. I didn't want to attack you so soon, Origin Dragon. I still want to see Chaldea struggle. But since you're looking for death, don't blame me. As he spoke, the man's face began to turn ferocious. His eyes turned blood red and the corners of his mouth cracked to his ears. Let my Temple of Time deal with you. On the other side, a huge white dragon was swimming in the void like the universe. Its ruby-like dragon eyes were looking around. It's almost there. Now, even without the black mud imprint, I can feel that incomparably hostile power. Although he didn't know why, Wuming now knew that he could completely sense the gathering place of those natural enemies. Then Wuming saw the huge aperture that belonged to the M-shaped moon world, and the throne of the temple embedded in the void above the aperture. It's really the periphery of the M-shaped moon world. Wuming had an expression of I knew it. Every world was fixed in a certain place in the void. Although the M-shaped moon world had countless parallel worlds, they were all in the same place. If one entered the huge aperture directly, one would immediately enter a parallel world. And if one wanted to enter a specific parallel world or a certain point in time, or even a singularity, one would need to use the space-time tunnel. Wuming used the space-time tunnel previously, but Wuming didn't find any additional singularities. Then, Wuming laughed self-deprecatingly. The other party had the power of the origin, So how could he still exist in a singularity? Wuming understood that the person he was looking for couldn't be bound by time and space, so he must be in the void of the various worlds that wasn't affected by time and space. Without any hesitation, Wuming flew straight to the temple. Just as he entered the temple, Wuming felt hostility and realized that something wanted to attack him. An indescribable voice sounded. Then countless tentacles attacked Wuming. No, they weren't tentacles. They're actually demon god pillars. Wuming squinted his huge red dragon eyes and said. Wuming also thought that these were tentacles at first. Although demon god pillars could use tentacles, the tentacles of demon god pillars were spiral-shaped pieces of flesh. However, the tentacles that were attacking them were full of eyes. Taking a closer look, these were clearly demon god pillars. It was just that Wuming's body had become a lot bigger, so when he looked at the demon god pillars, they looked like small tentacles. Thinking about it, it's just tentacles. They're useless against my servant body, so how could they be useful against my main body? Wuming shook his head. However, could the demon god pillars themselves be enough to deal with Wuming's main body? The answer was naturally no. Roar. It was clearly the void, but Wuming's roar reverberated in the void. After hearing Wuming's roar, the demon god pillars suddenly stopped, but they didn't stop. If one looked carefully, the demon god pillars' movements would become awkward. These low-level creatures were frightened by the pressure of Wuming, a high-level creature. Sure enough, you're worthy of being that guy's subordinates. But I didn't expect to subdue you with just a roar. After saying that, Wuming didn't stop and continued to fly forward. Immediately, Wuming's body emitted light, like a lamp in the darkness. The light instantly covered the demon god pillars. Then faint golden lightning appeared in the light. In terms of attack, this move didn't seem to cause any damage. Instead, the demon god pillars felt a warm feeling. However, Wuming's attack was naturally not that simple. The intense light made it impossible to see the demon god pillars covered by the light. Then the light suddenly erupted with golden lightning. After a few breaths, Wuming withdrew the light, and the demon god pillars that were originally covered by the light were nowhere to be seen. The power of the Blade of Salvation isn't something that a mere demon god pillar can block, Wuming said indifferently, not taking the demon god pillar's destruction to heart. Then, Wuming continued to fly to the platform of the temple where the throne was located. As for the other demon god pillars, it was unknown whether they were afraid or under someone's orders. In short, they didn't touch Wuming anymore. Or rather, they didn't seek their own deaths. Wuming flew to the platform that was so wide that it was unseemly, and slowly descended. Dragon of Origin, have you come? Are you ready to accept your death? The man from before was still sitting on his throne with one hand supporting his chin, emitting the aura of a king. His originally ferocious face had now returned to a harmless look. After all, I don't think it's appropriate to leave you behind the scenes. As expected, it's better to get rid of you now. Wuming said casually, as if getting rid of the man on the throne was like squashing an ant. You don't have to talk nonsense with me. Dragon of Origin, if you've grown up, I might be afraid. But the current you isn't enough for me to take you seriously. The man's words were filled with arrogance. Although Wuming was very displeased, it made Wuming smile inside. No matter when, arrogance was a great taboo. Facing the arrogant man, Wuming thought he had already won half the battle. Speaking of which, I thought you were at a singularity. I didn't expect you to be in the void outside the world. Wuming didn't continue the topic from before, and instead talked about this place. Originally, Wuming thought that the other party's base was also a singularity. After all, it was burned on Earth, and the temple that had no foothold could only create a singularity to be independent. As mentioned before, Wuming thought so, and entered the space-time tunnel. In the end, he didn't find a singularity. Therefore, Wuming directly came to the void. Relying on the Dragon of Origin's natural characteristic of flying freely in the void, Wuming came to the vicinity of the M-shaped moon. In the end, Wuming really did find it. It could be said that the current Temple of Time was no longer a singularity, but an existence that was truly attached to the void. If it was allowed to develop, it might even become an independent world. That was indeed the case. But one day, the black mud accidentally came to my temple. The man didn't mind Wu Ming changing the topic. Instead, he enthusiastically answered Wu Ming's question. Although Wu Ming already knew, the man suddenly stretched out his hand, and a mass of black substance appeared in his hand. After Wu Ming saw the black mud, he immediately felt uncomfortable. The feeling of a natural enemy surged in his heart. To be honest, if it was me in the past, I might have been affected by these things. However, from what I see now, these black mud are completely increasing my strength. As he spoke, the man stood up. My temple of time can be separated from the singularity and become independent of the world. It's all thanks to the power of origin, dragon of origin. The man laughed loudly, and his face was full of devastation. That being said, you haven't fully grasped the power of origin, have you? King Solomon's faker, or rather, it would be better to call you Gidia. Wu Ming's words made the man frown, and he was stunned. Chapter 564. That's right, I am Gidia, commander of the 72 Demon God Pillars Amalgamation. Demon God King Gidia. Saying that, the man's outer appearance ignited, and immediately, the man's appearance changed completely. He was humanoid but much taller than an ordinary person, as well as strangely thick forelimbs. A hole appeared in the center of Gidia's chest, and a purple eye-like orb was embedded in the hole, making people shiver. Blood-like veined patterns didn't seem to have been adjusted, but actually covered Gidia's body in an orderly fashion, connecting to the orb in front of Gidia's chest. He couldn't be called human, but had a bald head that looked like a human. On his head grew 2 antlers, but more like tree branches. This was the demon god King Gaia. It was different from Solomon's monster, demon god King Gaia. As expected, you are King Solomon's creation. Wu Ming's draconic eyes narrowed. There's nothing strange about that. Although I'm Solomon's creation, after King Solomon's death, there's nothing strange about me occupying Solomon's body. It could be said that the 72 demon god pillars came from Solomon's magic grimoire Raymond Gayton, also known as Gidia. And after King Solomon's death, the name of the collective that was formed in King Solomon's body was very easy to guess. It was Gaia. The awakened Gidia could be said to be Solomon. After all, Solomon and Gidia were both characters who commanded the 72 demon god pillars, so it wasn't strange for Gidia to occupy the dead Solomon's body. But you really surprised me, Origin Dragon. The man no, demon god King Gidia raised his head, looking at Wu Ming's draconic head. Even the taller Gidia wasn't as large as Wu Ming's original body. Wu Ming was still looking down on Gidia. Then, are you surprised that I know you haven't completely grasped your origin power, or are you surprised that I know your identity? Wu Ming said with incomparable calmness. He was not frightened by Gaia's appearance that was neither human nor ghost at all. After all, he had seen too many dirty things and had gotten used to it. I have both, Gaia smiled and continued. Indeed. Although I've obtained the power of the black origin soil, and used it to move my temple from the singularity to the void, that's all there is to it. In fact, I'm worse than you described. I don't actually control the power of the black origin soil at all, and I'm only relying on the byproduct of controlling the black origin soil. As if he had embarrassed himself, Gidia put the black origin soil back into his body. To be able to guess that I haven't fully grasped the power of origin, it's probably because I've never invaded another world. In response to Gidia's words, Wu Ming nodded. That's right. After all, I'm in the real origin, which is connected to other worlds. I can still do a simple check on your situation, Wu Ming said calmly. As mentioned before, the origin was like a control panel, and Wu Ming was the key to the control panel. Wu Ming, who had gradually grown by absorbing the power of the origin from the origin, gradually unlocked the power of the control panel. For example, he could use the time of the worlds that Wu Ming had visited as well as a simple check on Gidia's situation. However, that was all there was to it. The current Wu Ming didn't have the power to destroy a world with a flick of his finger. Otherwise, Gidia wouldn't have looked down on Wu Ming so much. After all, if Wu Ming had that kind of power, Wu Ming would have eliminated Gidia, who stole the power of origin. If Wu Ming wanted to possess that kind of power, He would have to grow into an adult to obtain that kind of power. Gideon knew a bit about the origin dragon through the origin black mud, so Gideon wasn't worried about Wu Ming doing anything to him. A certain person was entrusted with a treasure comparable to a nation, but because they were too young, that person couldn't open the key to the treasure. And who knew how long it would take for that person to obtain the key? As a result, some people with ulterior motives would definitely play tricks and wouldn't care about that person's thoughts. Gideon was such a person. By the time Wu Ming grew up, Gideon would have achieved his goal. Then, how did you know that I wasn't Solomon? Gideon asked. It could be said that Gideon only cared about, and was surprised by this matter. In my impression, you have never seen Solomon, and your knowledge of him is only from historical records. How can you say my real identity so accurately? Then Gideon shook his head. Don't say that because Raymond Gayton is called Gideon, you guessed that I was the one who occupied King Solomon's body. That would be too degrading. This made Wu Ming stun for a moment. He was indeed going to say that. Oh, then make a guess, Gideon. Wu Ming looked at Gideon jokingly. Then, after Gideon thought for a few seconds, he gave Wu Ming an answer. I think the biggest possibility is that you met our King Solomon without me knowing. That's the case. Wu Ming smiled. Although Wu Ming's face was smiling, Wu Ming's heart was as if he was facing a great enemy. Gideon's IQ is inexplicably online. Those so-called great villains without IQ seem to be lying. I just saw the real King Solomon, so I knew you were fake. Based on this, I inferred your identity as Gideon. Sure enough. Gideon nodded slightly. Then, I don't know if you can see my other identity, the Dragon of Origin. This time it was Gideon's turn to let Wu Ming guess. You don't need to tell me, I will do the same, the first beast. Wu Ming revealed Gideon's other identity, one of the 7 great human evils, the beast with the principle of mercy, Beast Eye. Wu Ming had already seen through Gideon's identity through the power of origin, when Gideon appeared. Even if Gideon had the origin black soil on him, Wu Ming could still see through it as easily as if he saw through Fufu's identity as the 4th beast. Or rather, it was because of the origin black soil on Gideon's body that it made it easier for Wu Ming to see through Gideon's identity as the 1st beast. It seems that I really underestimated you, Dragon of Origin. Then Gideon raised one of his hands. In front of my great cause, you are really an eyesore. As Gideon spoke, Wu Ming's muscles tightened. Then you will die here, Dragon of Origin. In an instant, countless black flames shot out from Gideon's hand toward Wu Ming like a machine gun. Roar! Wu Ming let out a furious roar, flapped his huge dragon wings, and dodged the black flames in an extremely unscientific manner. That's what I had in mind. You can leave here today, Gideon. Wu Ming, who had flown into the sky above the lookout, opened his mouth abruptly, and a pale golden flame shot out like a high-pressure water gun, shooting towards Gaia like a tooth for a tooth. Good timing. Gideon yelled and waved his hands. A pure energy barrier appeared before Gideon and blocked Wu Ming's origin dragon breath. This was the first official confrontation between the young dragon of origin, Wu Ming, and the deity warden king Gideon, who had obtained the origin black soil. It could be said that whether it was Gideon's black flames or Wu Ming's origin dragon breath, ordinary servants couldn't resist them at all. If they were ordinary people, they would have been burned to ashes before coming into contact with them, just like ordinary humans approaching the sun. However, for the two of them, who could be said to be superior in terms of status and strength, those were just ordinary attacks. Gideon never thought that his black flames could kill or even injure Wu Ming, and Wu Ming was naturally not naive enough to think that his ordinary dragon breath could burn Gideon to death. All of this was just the first confrontation. The real battle had only just begun. Chapter 565. Boom. Like a nuclear explosion, a loud sound reverberated through the entire temple. Thick smoke rose from the depths of the temple. The 72 demon god pillars appeared in various parts of the large temple, all of them staring at the depths of the temple. Swish! A white, holy figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the temple. Even with the countless eyes of the demon god pillars, they were unable to see this figure clearly. They could only hear the sound of something breaking through the air. Then, following closely behind the white figure, a black figure suddenly rushed out. This time, the demon god pillars saw clearly that it was their king, the leader of the 72 demon god pillars, the demon god King Wuxia. Then there was no need to guess who the white figure was. It was definitely the dragon of origin that dared to boldly fly into the depths of the temple to look for trouble with their king. In the eyes of the demon god pillars, the dragon of origin was being beaten back by their king, and was even being exterminated by their king. As a result, the demon god pillars began to dance wildly. Their huge tentacles constantly swayed as they rejoiced at the strength of their king. However, Wuxia didn't pay attention to the situation of the demon god pillars. Instead, he focused on dealing with Wuming. Even though Wuxia was chasing after Wuming, it was actually just Wuming deliberately shifting the battlefield. It wasn't that Wuxia couldn't catch up to Wuming, but that he also wanted to shift the battlefield. If the demon god pillars entered the depths of the temple where Wuxia was, they would discover that the depths of the temple had already been destroyed beyond recognition. As a formation similar to a battlefield, the Temple of Time could assist Wuxia in dealing with the enemy. Moreover, because it was King Solomon's second precious artifact, it could be said to be relatively sturdy. There was basically no need to worry about it being destroyed. It could completely act as a battlefield. However, if the enemy was Wuming, it wouldn't work at all. As mentioned earlier, Wuxia, who had obtained the black soil of origin, wasn't afraid of Wuming at all. However, before obtaining the black soil of origin, Wuxia was still rather fearful of Wuming. The reason why the dragon of origin was called the dragon of origin was because it was born from the origin. Its body was extremely resistant to magic, and its defense against physical attacks wasn't weak either. This allowed the origin dragon to deal with its enemies with brute force. The Temple of Time was dragged out by Wuxia through the black origin mud from the void where the singularity was formed. It was not strengthened because Wuxia simply used the black origin mud to enhance his own strength. The Time Shrine itself was an A-grade relic. It was a relic of its own. It could be said that even Gilgamesh's parochial sword could destroy this noble artifact. So could it support Wu Ming and Gaia's battle here? Naturally, the answer was no. Moreover, Wuxia wouldn't be so arrogant as to divert his attention to protect his noble artifact in the face of an origin dragon. As a result, the Temple of Time couldn't withstand the attacks of Wuming and Wuxia, who had obtained the origin black soil. This was Wuxia's seat. If possible, Wuxia did not want to fight there. Wuming was also disgusted by the temple's support for Wuxia. Therefore, Wuming and Wuxia willingly left the Temple of Time and went outside. However, the reason Wuxia followed behind Wuming wasn't because he was acting, but because he really couldn't catch up with Wuming. The black origin mud attached to Wuxia and increased Wuxia's various attributes. Even Wuxia's D-grade agility was upgraded to A-grade. However, Wuming had 12 clones. As soon as the Phoenix form was activated, the ability to be related to time directly prevented Wuxia from catching up with Wuming. If one were to look at the data, Wuming, who had been in the Origin Dragon for a long time and absorbed a large amount of Origin Dragon's power, all of his attributes were EX, which meant that he was unpredictable. However, Wuming didn't think that he could shake off Wuxia by relying on his speed alone. So Wuming chose to use the Phoenix form. Wuming was very strong, but in the face of the black soil, which was his natural enemy, Wuming still felt that he was weak. Especially when the enemy was a monster like Wuxia, who had obtained the origin black soil. Even if Wuming dared to fight Wuxia head-on, he was still very cautious. He left the Temple of Time because Wuming was cautious, which was why he did so. However, since he had left the enemy's position, he could start again. After leaving the Temple of Time and flying into the void, Wuming suddenly turned around and whipped his huge and powerful tail at Wuxia. Wuxia naturally wasn't afraid. His thick fist mixed with black flames, he punched Wuming's tail. Boom! Wuming's tail was sent flying high into the air. At the same time, Wuming's had launched a platinum dragon breath at Wuxia. Wuxia, who had been burned, hurriedly retreated and left Wuming's attack range. After that, Wuming and Wuxia stared at each other from a distance, neither moving. The situation became a standoff between the two of them. Wuming swayed his tail gently. On his white tail, there were black marks where Wuxia had hit it. Those were the marks left behind by Gidea's black soil flame. In addition, there were many black marks on Wuming's body, and they were the kind that went deep into his bones. Not only that, but a lot of Wuming's dragon scales had also been shattered by Gidea's attack. Although Wuming's body was in a sorry state, Gidea wasn't bad either. Gidea's arms had burn marks, and there was a huge wound on his back that extended from his left shoulder to his right abdomen. Gidea's thick arms and thighs were also stained with black burn marks. In addition, one of Gidea's horns was also broken. Whether it was Wuming's injuries or Gidea's injuries, they were all caused by the two of them fighting like wild beasts. Gidea knew that the black soil origin restrained Wuming, so he would mix in the black soil origin in every attack. The burn marks on Wuming's body were all caused by Gidea using the black soil origin as the raw material to release the black flames. When facing the black soil origin, Wuming seemed to have no defense. Neither his dragon scales nor his magic power could defend against the black soil origin's attacks, and they were directly penetrated. Often, Gidea's flames would directly burn through Wuming's scales and muscles. Every time Wuming was attacked, it was as if he had inhaled a fatal poison, and the intense pain was mixed with intense dizziness. However, thanks to this, Wuming also took the opportunity to deal a lot of heavy blows to Gidea. The huge wound on Gidea's back had been caused by Wuming's blade of salvation, and the broken horns on Gidea's body had also been cut off by Wuming's blade of salvation. The burn marks on his body had been caused by Wuming's origin breath. Indeed, the origin breath didn't have much effect on Gidea, but many little drops made an ocean. Wuming had successfully caused a lot of damage to Gidea by repeatedly spitting out flames and condensing them into lines of fire. However, it was thanks to the black soil origin that he was able to cause double the damage to Gidea. After all, Wuming and the black soil origin were mutually reinforcing and counteracting. From the injuries of the two, it could be seen how much Gidea regretted his decision. This was also the reason why Gidea chose to leave the position that was advantageous to him. Gidea guessed that if they continued fighting like this, the Temple of Time would probably be directly torn apart. I didn't expect that. I still underestimated you, Dragon of Origin. You actually have so many tricks up your sleeve, Gidea said to Wuming calmly. Wuming's own abilities weren't enough to be fatal to Gidea. What was fatal to Gidea were Wuming's divine blade of salvation and his 12 incarnations. Whether it was Wuming's own abilities or the origin breath, Gidea wasn't afraid of them at all. Indeed, they wouldn't have any effect on Gidea. However, if it was the divine blade of salvation that was originally very strong and had been evolved by the origin after being obtained by Wuming, as well as the 12 incarnations that came from the fusion of the two gods' 12 attributes, Gidea would have to be more vigilant. Why do you think I dared to cause trouble for you? Even if you've obtained the black soil origin, you're too arrogant, Gidea. With that, Wuming directly roared, and a fireball appeared from Wuming's mouth. It was Wuming's sun incarnation. Immediately afterward, the fireball became so huge that it was large enough to cover Gidea. Then Wuming suddenly pushed the fireball at Gidea at an extremely fast speed. Don't think that you can defeat me just because you have some tricks, Dragon of Origin. After saying that, Gidea spread open his arms, and in an instant, a large light wheel appeared behind him. The large light wheel gathered power in an instant, and then a purple-black beam of light blasted at Wuming. Boom! The battle was still ongoing. Chapter 566. Inside the Root of Origin, Wuming's backup machine, which was lying on the platform and taking a nap, suddenly woke up. Wuming shifted his consciousness to the backup machine. Gidea actually attracted the other black origin mud that was wandering in the void, and then self-destructed. Wuming recalled what had happened with a gloomy expression. After Wuming and Gidea left the Time God's temple, they first used the sun incarnation to clash with Gidea's third relic, causing a violent explosion. If the demon god pillars had not combined their powers to form a defense, they and the Time God's temple would have been destroyed by Wuming and Gidea's attacks. The Time God's temple was saved, although it was still in a shattered state. The 72 demon god pillars were also almost destroyed. Although they had been revived, they were still heavily injured. Then, Wuming directly returned to his human form and used the power of the 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation to fight Gidia to a standstill. However, overall, Wuming had the upper hand. However, Gidia was someone who had lived for thousands of years. The black origin mud that he possessed could not hurt Wuming, so he used the black origin mud that was scattered in the void to trap Wuming. Wuming was almost trapped in the black origin mud that Gidia had gathered. The black origin mud was a substance without a consciousness. It was also because of this that Wuming was not afraid of the black origin mud. Wuming was most afraid of people using the black origin mud against him. The black origin mud was like a gun. Wuming was an ordinary person, and an ordinary person would not be afraid of an inanimate object. However, if someone picked up a gun and fired at Wuming, Wuming's life would be in danger. The 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation were Wuming's guns. With a gun, Wuming could fight back against the person who used a gun against him. That's right, because Wuming and the black origin mud countered each other. They were basically two berserkers. However, there was a limit to how well they countered each other. Gidia had gathered almost all the black origin mud in the void. Wuming in his human form was like a lone boat in the sea. It could be said that if it were not for the 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation, Wuming would have died in the black origin mud tide. If Silent Wonder was subdued by the black origin soil, Gaia would not mind killing him. From Wuming's current situation, it could be seen that Wuming's outcome was still not good. When Gaia saw that Wuming was about to escape from the origin black soil's encirclement, he made a bold decision. He directly let the black origin mud self-destruct. For example, in a sealed secret room, an ordinary person was holding a pesticide and killing insects. However, because he really couldn't touch the insects, he directly tore apart the pesticide sprayer violently and sprayed the pesticide everywhere in the secret room. In this way, the insects were finished. But it should be known that pesticides were also harmful to the human body. Kill 1,000 enemies, but lose 800 of your own. Wuming's body disappeared in the explosion of the black origin mud, and Gidia was also injured by the self-destruction of the black origin mud. Wuming could guess what Gidia was thinking. The current Wuming was quite difficult to deal with. After letting him go, there was no guarantee that Wuming would not become stronger again. It could only be said that Gidia was worthy of his reputation. He didn't even think about it. Or it could be said that he directly detonated the black origin mud after careful consideration. As a result, Wuming's body disappeared, Gidia was injured, and the black origin mud was almost completely destroyed. Wuming, who had temporarily transferred his consciousness, knew that his body didn't die, but was injured more severely than Gidia, and had been blasted to some unknown world. For example, could you imagine someone detonating the earth to kill an ordinary person? It could be said that if Wuming hadn't been soaking in the black origin for a long time to absorb its power to evolve, he would probably have died. No, it should be said that even Wuming would have died in such a situation when he was fighting Artesius. It seems that the black origin is really a hotbed for me. Wuming was a little regretful. He should have soaked in the black origin for a while before looking for Gidia. At the very least, he wouldn't have been forced to transfer his consciousness because of the black origin mud's explosion. Wuming had transferred his consciousness because the black origin mud's self-destruction didn't just target his body, but also his mind. Physical damage could be recovered, but if his mind collapsed, it would basically be over. Fortunately, Gidia helped me solve part of the problem. Gidia had gathered almost all of the black origin mud in the void of various worlds and detonated them. It could be said that Wuming no longer had to worry about the black origin mud in the void. However, the black origin mud didn't only exist in the void. According to Wuming's experience, Wuming already knew that a lot of black origin mud had entered various worlds. Moreover, there was no guarantee that Gidia wouldn't mass-produce the black origin mud himself. Wuming guessed that the reason the black origin mud was endless was because of its asexual reproduction ability. Wuming didn't believe that such a large amount of black origin mud really came from the black origin. The most important evidence was the image Wuming saw when he came into contact with the black origin mud mark. The amount of black origin mud that left the black origin mud from the black origin wasn't as much as what Gidia had detonated. The black origin mud only appeared after Wuming was sent away from the black origin. And Wuming knew his own situation. He didn't stay in the black origin world for long before he was sent to another world to grow. What a headache! Wuming reached out his dragon claw and rubbed his head. This was great. Kalas and Enkidu were both on Wuming's main body, and the two of them disappeared with Wuming's main body. However, no matter what, Gidia didn't have the ability to play any tricks now. The self-destruction of the black origin mud was enough for him to deal with. I have to find my main body as soon as possible. It's hard to calculate the time. After all, the flow of time in the world that Wuming's main body entered might be different from the black origin world. The self-destruction of the black origin mud just now had temporarily disrupted Wuming's control of the black origin world. It would take some time before Wuming could find out where his main body was through the black origin world. And Wuming's current main body couldn't leave the black origin world. Who knew if there were any fish that slipped through the net in the void? If the black origin mud invaded, Wuming would have nowhere to cry. Sigh, looks like I can only wait. Wuming lay down on the platform and started to rest. Although Wuming had shifted his consciousness in time, Wuming's consciousness was still greatly affected. Now Wuming felt like his head had been run over by a truck. It's hard to imagine what would happen to me if I was completely injured by the self-destruction of the black origin mud. If he was slightly affected, it would be like being run over by a truck. If he was completely injured, he would probably have a mental breakdown. At this moment, a letter suddenly fell from the black origin world to Wuming's head. A letter? This gave Wuming a fright. Wuming didn't have any malicious intent in this letter. In the black origin world, Wuming was half invincible. He could still detect the danger of a letter. In other words, this was a harmless letter. Then Wuming used his telekinesis to pick up the letter that fell on his head. There was nothing else on the snow-white envelope except for the red ink on the back, which was used to ensure that the letter was sealed. It looked like a simple and plain letter that couldn't be any more simple. However, Wuming narrowed his eyes and started to think about the problem. The black origin world wasn't a place that anyone could enter. Now that Wuming was guarding the black origin world, not just anyone could enter, unless Wuming agreed to it. Wuming looked at the letter and suddenly thought of a possibility. But before opening the letter, Wuming gathered his power and created a servant's spiritual base. This was in preparation for him to help Gadatsi at the next singularity. Then Wuming opened the letter. Chapter 567. Above a large lake near the outer gate of Eastern District 210-5380 in the box court world. All of a sudden, 4 figures, 2 men and 2 women, appeared 10,000 meters above the ground. Since they could not let Newton faint from crying in the toilet, the 4 figures were falling vertically due to gravity. Wuming opened his eyes, but when he noticed his current state, he did not do anything. Instead, he was thinking deeply about what had happened. On the platform inside the root of origin, Wuming opened the letter after creating a spiritual base. Immediately after that, Wuming felt that the letter was pulling him as if it was taking him somewhere. But it was clear that the letter had failed. Even if it was a backup body, the body was made from the flesh of the root of origin dragon. How could a mere letter move Wuming? Moreover, this was inside the root of origin. The half-invincible Wuming could not be pulled away no matter how one thought about it. However, Wuming had a hunch. This letter is definitely a signal sent by my real body. With that in mind, Wuming decided to take a look at the world that the letter wanted to pull him into. With the automatic management of the root of origin, there was no need to worry about the root of origin being lost. However, it also meant that Wuming's backup body could not go. Therefore, Wuming emptied his mind and allowed the letter to pull his spirit over. That was right. Wuming was now a spiritual body. No, to be precise, Wuming was now a spirit. Wuming's current state could also be called a heroic spirit. The heroic spirit's clone was called a servant. Wuming, on the other hand, had directly materialized his spiritual body. Instead of weakening the clone, he had retained the full strength of his real body. The only difference from his real body was that Wu Ming could not transform into the root of origin dragon's gigantic dragon form. Moreover, everything about Wu Ming was a magical projection without a physical body. Whether it was his tools or relics, they were all illusory. However, those tools and relics could not be used. Therefore, at this moment, Wu Ming's spiritual body could be called a heroic spirit state. Then Wu Ming's heroic spirit state opened his eyes and appeared 10,000 meters high in the sky of this world. In short, he had arrived in an unknown world. Although Wu Ming had sorted it out in his mind, Wu Ming's doubts grew. It was his doubts about this unknown world, or rather, his desire to explore the unknown world had become more burdensome. After all, Wu Ming was a traveler. After thinking about it for a while, Wu Ming came back to his senses and began to look around. Then he discovered his current situation. Am I in the sky? Although Wu Ming in the sky, Wu Ming, Wu Ming, Wu Ming, Wu Ming, Wu Ming, Wu Ming, Wu Ming. Then, Wu Ming looked at the remaining man and two women who were in free fall like him. The four of them were in a state of four different forms of free fall. Each of them occupied a corner. First, Wu Ming looked at the person on his left. He had short, light blonde hair and purple eyes. He was wearing a pair of headphones that looked more like headbands than listening to music. He was dressed in a dark blue high school uniform and looked like a delinquent. He had an unruly and surprised smile on his face. Wu Ming understood his smile. It was the excitement and joy of encountering an extraordinary phenomenon after losing all passion for ordinary phenomena. He looks like a problem child, Wu Ming commented in his mind. Then Wu Ming looked at the person on his right. It was a young lady with the temperament of a rich lady. Her beautiful face was frowning slightly. She had black waist-length hair and flat bangs on her forehead. The ends of her long hair on both sides of her forehead were tied into braids. Two red bows were tied on both sides of her head. She wore a pure white uniform with a yellow tie and a conservative dark blue traditional dress that reached her calves. This was also a problem child. And it was a problem child in the feudal and conservative style of a rich lady, Wu Ming commented. Finally, Wu Ming looked at the expressionless girl who was holding a cat with 3 different colors of fur. Beautiful short brown hair. She was not beautiful, but she had a delicate face like a doll. There was a silver hairpin on the side of her short hair, which added a bit of cuteness to the girl. He was wearing a white sleeveless top and orange shorts, and a sleeveless white trench coat with blue edges. Around his neck was a carving that looked like a pendant. On his feet, he was wearing knee-high socks and calf-high boots. This unique combination gave people a feeling that they were dazzling, but there must be a demonic sense of evil under that face. Simply put, this was also a problem child. Wu Ming was quite troubled. Thinking about it carefully, although Wu Ming was not interested in causing trouble, Wu Ming himself was also half a problem child. I feel like I'm in trouble, Wu Ming said lightly. Then, to relax, Wu Ming looked at the scenery in the distance. As a ghost that was doing a vertical descent from a height of 10,000 meters, Wu Ming thought that the scenery here was quite good. Just kidding. In the distance, Wu Ming saw areas covered by transparent semicircles. Countless areas that looked like greenhouse bases were closely adjacent to each other, and then extended into the distance that he could not see the end of. Those transparent semicircles that looked like greenhouse sheds were some barriers. This was Wu Ming's judgment. Around the transparent sheds were a lush forest that covered a large area. The area that Wu Ming was in looked like a lush forest. All in all, this was a large area, at least much larger than Earth. However, Wu Ming was quite interested in this vast area that he could not see the end of. Even with Wu Ming's eyesight, he could not see the end, so one could imagine how big this world was. And the vastness of the world meant that there were many unknown pleasures. The reason why Wu Ming was a traveler was because of his desire to explore the unknown. However, this was not without its drawbacks. This meant that it would be very troublesome for Wu Ming to find his main body. However, seeing that he was getting closer to the ground, Wu Ming, who was about to fall, did not think about other things for the time being. Let's land safely first. As he said that, Wu Ming activated his telekinesis. In an instant, including Wu Ming, the 4 people that fell from the sky seemed to be supported by something invisible as they floated steadily to the ground. Yo, little brother, This is your method, right? It's quite interesting, isn't it? Let me thank you first. First, the delinquent young man greeted Wu Ming and thanked him after landing. It's just a small trick using my telekinesis. It's not worth mentioning. Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at the giant lake beside him. Moreover, even without me, you would only fall into this lake. At least your lives would not be in danger. But in the end you still helped us, didn't you? The blonde young man smiled and waved his hand indifferently. I agree with this delinquent young man. Even if the original result was good, but I, Jiu Fei Niao, was saved by you, the necessary gratitude is necessary. The lady named Jiu Fei Niao also thanked Wu Ming. Thank you. On the other hand, the girl who was hugging the cat was quite nimble. She didn't say anything and directly thanked Wu Ming. The three of them were people with strong personalities, so Wu Ming had no choice but to accept their gratitude. Then the four of them exchanged names. By the way, could it be that you guys also received that strange letter? The young man named 16 Knights asked the others with a smile. Ah, so 16th Eventide has also received that letter? Miss Jiao Fei Niao replied with her arms crossed. Same. The delicate girl named Haruhai Byayoshi nodded. Me too. Wu Ming was the same. However, Wu Ming did not feel that the letter he received was the same as the three problem children. He wanted to ask why. One word, intuition, for all ***. However, Wu Ming did not want to be an anomaly. He wanted to be like the three of them. Let's not talk about the letter for now. Little brother, you're not human, right? Suddenly, 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming with an arrogant smile. Chapter 568. This made Wu Ming frown. Could it be that this seemingly delinquent boy was actually hostile towards non-humans? Don't worry, it's just that your powerful aura is making my blood boil. Normal humans can't possibly make me think this way. Wu Ming then realized that 16 Knights, Jiu Yuki, and Haruhibuyao were standing a little far away from him. Sorry, I feel a little uncomfortable being close to you. This was what Jiu Yuki said. I'm fine, it's just that Sanmao Cat feels uncomfortable. This was what Haruhibuyao said. Including 16 Knights, the three of them were slightly further away from Wu Ming because of the pressure from Wu Ming's powerful aura. Wu Ming had used his spiritual form twice. The first time was when he was pulled over by Wu Ming's semi-fixed barrier, and the second time was when Wu Ming took the initiative to use it. Although the physical body was different, Wu Ming's spiritual form was the same. Because Attila was the giant god, and because Wu Ming was unfamiliar with spiritual power, and had never fought with Gidia before, Wu Ming didn't put too much pressure on Attila. This time, Wu Ming's current state could be said to be the first time Wu Ming used his spiritual form on his own. In addition, he had just fought with Gidia, so the pressure didn't lose its effect because Wu Ming was a spiritual form. I'm sorry. Wu Ming smiled bitterly and retracted his pressure. I just fought with a powerful enemy, so I didn't adjust. I'm really sorry. Facing Wu Ming's apology, the two problem children accepted it as a matter of course. I, Jiu Yuki, forgive you. This time we're even. Jiu Yuki waved her hand. Ditto. Haruhibuyao was still hugging the cat with a look of indifference. Only 16 Knights didn't care about Wu Ming's apology for unintentionally releasing his pressure. Instead, he was very interested in Wu Ming's pressure and the enemy that Wu Ming thought was powerful. Why are you interested? Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights with interest. Of course, little brother. Do you want to spar with me? Wu Ming was silent. It wasn't because someone he just met wanted to spar with him, although it was more or less. Wu Ming was slightly surprised. Falling from a height of 10,000 meters, he didn't seem to be frightened at all. He wasn't interested in Wu Ming's telekinesis either. He didn't panic even after coming to an unknown world. More importantly, these three boys and girls, they weren't affected by Wu Ming's. That was comparable to the world, or even a higher level of pressure. Wu Ming looked like an ordinary human, but the three boys and girls only subconsciously distanced themselves from Wu Ming. They didn't react to Wu Ming's pressure. Only distanced themselves from Wu Ming by a little. It was obvious that these three seemingly ordinary humans were not ordinary at all, and were not simple at all. Now, if someone suddenly told Wu Ming that they were the chosen ones, which was quite ridiculous, Wu Ming would believe it. Then Wu Ming did something that would be considered a bully in the eyes of those who knew Wu Ming's abilities. Alright, let's spar. Let me see what's so special about you guys. Wu Ming thought. After hearing Wu Ming's words, 16 Knights smiled, and it was the purest kind of smile. Seeing this smile, Wu Ming was sure that this seemingly ordinary human Wu Ming wasn't as ordinary as he looked on the surface. Then, just as 16 Knights was about to tell Wu Ming what was a normal brawl exclusive to male high school students, a rabbit suddenly jumped out. Stop. Stop. Please don't fight. Black Rabbit will be very distressed. A blue-haired girl wearing a rabbit costume as a bunny girl suddenly jumped out from the bushes. She looked at Silent and 16 Knights who were about to start fighting with each other with a troubled expression. Cosplay. It's cosplay, right? Oh, this is really pleasing to the eye. The three problem children each expressed their opinions. However, Wu Ming didn't think that this girl who seemed to be cosplaying was cosplaying, because he felt the power of God from this rabbit girl. After all, Wu Ming was half a god slayer. Although he didn't bring the body of a god slayer with him, thanks to his time as a half-god slayer, Wu Ming's understanding of gods and things related to gods was still quite sensitive. Black Rabbit is not a cosplay. Black Rabbit is the noble Moon Rabbit, a nobleman. The girl named Black Rabbit shouted in exasperation, trying to prove her innocence. Moon Rabbit? Wu Ming thought thoughtfully. Wu Ming knew this word. Back in the world of the God Slayers, Wu Ming read a lot of books about mythology to deal with the various gods, although Wu Ming later found it troublesome and asked Collis to save it in the database. Ahem, but Wu Ming still knew a lot of myths and legends, and the story of Moon Rabbit happened to be a myth that Wu Ming knew. According to legend, Moon Rabbit jumped into the fire and sacrificed herself in order to save an old man. Then this action moved Sakura, and she was taken in by Sakura. In short, Moon Rabbit was a rabbit that lived by the principle of sacrifice and dedication. Black Rabbit should be the descendant of Moon Rabbit or something like that. But what was a nobleman? Wu Ming really didn't know about this. At this time, Haruai Hibaku appeared behind Black Rabbit without anyone noticing. I'll catch it. Then Haruai Hibaku grabbed one of Black Rabbit's rabbit ears, and at the same time he also added a voice for himself. Wah! You! What are you doing? Why are you grabbing Black Rabbit's rabbit ears? Black Rabbit looked as if her lifeline was grabbed. She nervously grabbed Haruai Hibaku's hand that was grabbing Black Rabbit's rabbit ears with tears in her eyes. Because I want to know if you're cosplaying or not. Haruai Hibaku showed a smug expression, and then the hand that was grabbing Black Rabbit's ear pulled up slightly. Wah, please stop. Black Rabbit was about to, no, it was already about to cry. Oh, could it be that it's a real rabbit ear? Let me try too. As she said that, Milady grabbed Black Rabbit's other rabbit ear. Wah! Black Rabbit let out a mournful cry that resounded through the sky, and a group of birds flew out of the forest in fright. Don't tell me you want to pull that Moon Rabbit's ear too. Wu Ming looked at Reverse 16 Knights who was eager to try. Reverse 16 Knights smiled. I want to, but that rabbit's ear is occupied by Haruai Hibaku and Milady. Moreover, Reverse 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming with a fighting spirit. I'm more interested in fighting with you. Stop. Fighting is prohibited. Black Rabbit, who had finally broken free from Haruai Hibaku's and Jio Yuasuk's torment, suddenly came in front of Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights. Then, Black Rabbit took out a folding fan from nowhere and hit Reverse 16 Knights and Wu Ming on the head. You bunch of problematic adults. Neither Reverse 16 Knights nor Wu Ming dodged, and both of them were hit by Black Rabbit's folding fan. Thank you for the compliment. Reverse 16 Knights smiled at Black Rabbit. I'm not complimenting you. Reverse 16 Knights, who treated problematic child as a compliment, made Black Rabbit feel helpless. However, Wu Ming felt that Reverse 16 Knights was deliberately teasing Black Rabbit. Speaking of which, I didn't do anything, so why did you hit me? Wu Ming subconsciously rubbed the spot on his head that Black Rabbit hit. Black Rabbit did not use any force, but Wu Ming was slightly unhappy that he was dragged into this. I just agreed to Reverse 16 Knights' request. That's all. Wu Ming looked at Black Rabbit with a smile. Wu Ming would never admit that his smile at this moment was extremely mischievous. Wu Ming's words of "that's all" made Black Rabbit feel quite helpless. Do you want to fight until there are casualties before you're happy? However, Reverse 16 Knights laughed. What are you talking about, little brother? I'm the one who picked a fight, and you're the one who fought back. Wu Ming, on the other hand, smiled with interest. In other words, this fight must be fought, and it must be fought at this moment. Stop. Mr. Villo only agreed. I haven't made a move yet. Black Rabbit protested. However, to Reverse 16 Knights, Wu Ming's answer was the beginning of the fight. In other words, it was the so-called fight back. Looking at Reverse 16 Knights who did not listen at all, Black Rabbit's shoulders drooped. Then let's postpone this fight. Can we listen to Black Rabbit explain the box court world to everyone? This sentence made Jiu Yuasuke and Haruhito Yayoi, who were ready to ambush Black Rabbit, Reverse 16 Knights whose eyes were already burning with desire, and Wu Ming who was paying attention to Black Rabbit all look at Black Rabbit. Seeing that the problematic child was so obedient, Black Rabbit smiled. Then let's listen to Black Rabbit's explanation. Chapter 569. Then after the Black Rabbit walked around in circles, it began to explain this world called Box Court World. First of all, welcome to the Box World. Black Rabbit opened her hands and closed one of her eyes playfully. With a smile on her face, she spoke a very enthusiastic opening line to Wu Ming and the other three. It feels so perfunctory. Haruhito Hikari whispered to Jiu Yuasuke. Indeed. Jiu Yuasuke nodded respectfully. Hey. Black Rabbit instantly collapsed again. Just kidding. 2. Because Black Rabbit was teased, its ears drooped, and it looked like it couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that it was about time, 16 Knights waved his hand. Let's cut to the chase. What exactly is this Box Court World? 16 Knights asked rudely. Really, Mr. 16 Knights is so rude. Black Rabbit complained. However, Wu Ming's next words made Black Rabbit's tail tighten. Let's not talk about whether it's rude or not. The person who was eavesdropping over there was you. As he said that, Wu Ming pointed to a bush. You. What are you talking about, Mr. Villo? Black Rabbit was just passing by for some reason. Ahahaha. Wu Ming's unwavering gaze caused Black Rabbit to stop its awkward performance. Yes, I'm sorry, Black Rabbit shouldn't hide and eavesdrop, but that's all reasonable. However, Wu Ming directly interrupted Black Rabbit's words. Okay, I didn't want to blame you. If I guessed correctly, you should have a lot to do with us coming to this world. Wu Ming's words made Black Rabbit's body tremble, and its ears drooped again. Oh, little brother, you're starting to suspect this rabbit too? 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming with a typical delinquent smile on his face. There's no other way. Wu Ming spread his hands. When we were still some distance away from the ground, I released my mental power to explore the surroundings. Not to mention the area blocked by the barrier. Within the area of thousands of square meters, there are no other humanoid creatures other than the four of us and the Black Rabbit. Over 1,000 square meters. Ju Yuan Flying Bird was shocked by Wu Ming's spiritual perception. Not only Kyugu Asuka, but Black Rabbit and Haruai Biao were also shocked. Even Reverse 16 Knights, who had always been calm in the face of such a situation, was shaken. It could be seen from his increasingly excited face. I have a question. Can a Villo's psychic power spread that far? Haruai Abe held the cat in one hand and raised his other hand. He looked quite cute. If I spread out in all directions with me as the center, the range can be much larger. If I only explore in one direction. Wu Ming closed his eyes and opened them a few seconds later to look at the local Black Rabbit. There's a spectacular waterfall in the easternmost area. There's also a snake there. If there's a chance, let's go check it out together. Could that be the world's end? Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming in shock. The world's end. 3 good heavens. This made the 3 problem children excited. Although this is the closest place to the world's end, it's still tens of thousands of meters away. It seems that Mr. Villo has an extremely powerful gift. Then, Black Rabbit looked at Reverse 16 Knights and the other two problem children who were eager to go and quickly waved his hand. You must not go there. The water god is there. The snake that Mr. Villo saw is Lord Water God. Now that you mention it, I want to go even more. Reverse 16 Knights' words almost made Black Rabbit cry again. Water god? Sounds like a god. If there's a chance, let's go check it out. Juyuan Flying Bird did not want to go immediately. However, in Black Rabbit's opinion, it was dangerous for problem children to have such thoughts. Snake. I don't hate snakes. If possible, I would like to become friends with Lord Snake, Haruai Toshi said to the cat in his arms. However, this sentence sounded gentle, but in Black Rabbit's opinion, it was also quite dangerous. Problem children were all troublemakers. Speaking of which, that snake stared at me just now. Looks like I'll have to teach it a lesson. Wuming was purely having fun. Please take back your troublemaking thoughts. Black Rabbit felt that she could not do it anymore. Speaking of which, are you actually a wizard? Reverse 16 Knights looked at Wuming. Not really. Compared to a wizard, I prefer a warrior who uses his fists to his flesh, Wuming joked. Then, is the telekinesis from before also a type of spirit power? Juyuan Flying Bird asked. That's right. As long as the spirit power is strong enough, it is not a problem to affect the real world. Wuming nodded. Then Villo, can you use your telekinesis to make Black Rabbit stand upside down? Finally, Haruai Toshi asked the most dangerous question for Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit was stunned. Of course. As soon as Wuming finished speaking, Black Rabbit felt her body floating. No, she really floated. Then Black Rabbit, who was 1 meter above the ground, was suddenly flipped over. Ah! Black Rabbit let out a sound that a girl should have, and tightly held onto her miniskirt. I'll grab it. Haruai Toshi and Juyuan Flying Bird took the opportunity to grab the rabbit's naturally drooping ears. Ah! Please. Please stop. What's with this miniskirt? Does it defy gravity? Reverse 16 Knights looked at the miniskirt in confusion. Even though she was flipped upside down, she still did not fall due to gravity. I'm afraid it's a special piece of clothing, Wuming said to Reverse 16 Knights. So that's how it is. This box is really amazing. 16 Knights clenched her fist and punched her other hand. Looking at Wuming and 16th Knights who seemed to be studying something important, Black Rabbit was completely enraged. You bunch of problematic children. A minute later, the 4 people, including Wuming, sat on a white cloth that Black Rabbit took out from a card. Black Rabbit, whose hair suddenly turned pink, knelt elegantly in front of the 4 people. According to Black Rabbit, her hair would only change color when her emotions changed drastically, or when she was ready for battle. Needless to say, the reason why her hair changed color this time was because of Wuming and the others. Then Black Rabbit, who gradually calmed down, regained her blue hair, and sighed helplessly. Really, how did Black Rabbit meet such a group of problematic adults? It must be said that Black Rabbit was indeed a descendant of the Moon Rabbit clan. But in terms of dedication and sacrifice, Wuming felt that she was already qualified. Being teased by the people she just met, constantly grabbing her rabbit ears, and being turned upside down. It could be said that she almost lost her virginity. Anyone would be furious. Although Black Rabbit was also angry, she only pretended to be angry, and then lectured Wuming and the others. Wuming simply knew that he could not make too much of a fuss, so he went along with Black Rabbit's idea. But as for the remaining 3 problematic children, Black Rabbit's hair can change color. Sigh, how interesting. Juyuan Fei looked at Black Rabbit's hair covetously. It is indeed interesting. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded and stroked his cat, as if he was considering whether his cat could change color. However, the cat did not give him face and shook its cat head in a very human-like manner. Stop, Black Rabbit. Don't play with Black Rabbit's hair anymore. Black Rabbit said helplessly. Black Rabbit's ears too. Seeing that the 2 wanted to say something, Black Rabbit quickly added. Tisk X2, stop it, Black Rabbit, I heard you. Then Black Rabbit's expression became teary again. Really, a group of problematic children. Okay, it's about time to get to the main topic. Wuming interrupted the farce. At this time, Black Rabbit realized that she was going to explain the matter of Hakata to the four people, but she was interrupted by Wuming. In the end, it led to this series of events. In the end, if you think about it carefully, it's all the little brother's fault. 16 knights looked at Wuming, who did not mind the trouble, and looked at Wuming with a mischievous smile. A lady will not cover for a criminal. Jiufei Niao flipped her hair and said calmly. However, her curved lips betrayed her. Yeah. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded fatally. Then, Black Rabbit looked like she was about to cry again. It's all Mr. Villo's fault. Chapter 570. Wuming's apology calmed Black Rabbit down a little, although 16 knights, Jiuyuki, and Haruai Hikari were still unhappy. Then, let's not talk about our problem for now. Please explain this world first. Then, according to Wuming's request, Black Rabbit began its original purpose, which was to explain the Suida world to the three. Actually, you've all discovered that you have magical abilities that are different from ordinary people. It's because of this ability that you've been invited to this courtyard world to participate in the gift game. After Black Rabbit finished speaking, Wuming vaguely observed 16 knights and the other two. 16 knights still looked like a bad boy without any change, but Jiuyuki and Haruai Hikari's expressions changed slightly. This meant that these two girls did indeed have abilities that were different from ordinary people. Actually, thinking about it, Wuming excluded himself for now. Thinking about it carefully, whether it was 16 knights who wanted to have a fight with Wuming, or Jiuyuki and Haruai Hikari who looked weak, but were actually not that simple. The three of them were not as simple as they looked. Just from the fact that they did not panic in an unfamiliar environment, or even in a foreign world, one could see that the three of them were not ordinary people. It was because they were not ordinary people that 16 knights and the others could come to this world. Or rather, they had the qualifications to be invited to this world. I'm afraid the so-called invitation is that letter. Wuming pondered. Those abilities are basically abilities bestowed by the Asura gods, Buddhas, fairies, demons, and stars. We call these abilities gifts, Black Rabbit continued. Wuming thought about this sentence for a while. Wuming was not from this world, but according to this statement, most of Wuming's abilities were indeed given by Asura gods, demons, fairies, stars, and other existences. And the gift game is a competition that uses gifts as a wager to compete. This world is a stage prepared for this. Black Rabbit said with a serious smile. Looks like she is very good at giving speeches. She has been a host many times. Wuming guessed. Since it's a competition, then anything can be gambled, right? Wuming interrupted Black Rabbit. Good question. Black Rabbit smiled. There are many types of bets. Not only can you bet on gifts, but you can also bet on gold coins, land, reputation, rights, and even the person itself. The more bets you put in, the more you will get. Isn't this a casino? Wuming complained in his heart. But I don't think it's as simple as you said, Black Rabbit. After all, this was the survival principle of a world. How could it be as simple as a casino? Wouldn't that be a mess? Yes, if you want to participate in the competition, you have to get permission from the organizer, hoster, or reach the standards set by the organizer, hoster, before you can participate. Then the Black Rabbit closed one eye, tilted its head, and extended a finger, looking playfully at Wuming and the other three. As for the rewards, you have to fulfill the conditions set by the organizer, hoster, before you can get them. Then the organizer, hoster, should be in existence that anyone can be as long as they can prepare the rewards. Wuming said. Yes, Mr. Villo is right. It seems that Mr. Villo has a very thorough understanding of box court. Black Rabbit smiled at Wuming. So that's how it is. To put it simply, this world is decided by the game, right? Wuming suddenly asked. According to Black Rabbit's explanation and Wuming's conclusion, it reminded Wuming of the other world where he gave the throne of the only god to the weakest god. The god of games, Tetu. Wuming guessed that 1,000 years later in that world, it would be similar to box court now. After all, it was the god of games. Wuming didn't even need to think to know what Tetu would do to that world. Well, in short, there won't be any war. It couldn't be said that Wuming understood Tetu. As a god born from Rick's wish, it was destined that he wouldn't be as violent as the other gods. Moreover, Rick's wish was to stop the war. Wuming believed that Tetu, born from Rick's faith, would definitely abide by this wish. Or rather, he would subconsciously abide by it. If that's the case, the bestowal tournament can also be considered a game. The lowest difficulty of the bestowal tournament is the simplest form of lottery. Then Black Rabbit's face instantly darkened. Like a demon, he looked at Wuming and the other three sneakily. As for the highest difficulty, you'll have to face the Asura gods and Buddhas in a battle of life and death. Really? 16 knights suddenly jumped up. Yes, of course it's true, Black Rabbit said proudly. Black Rabbit didn't notice 16 Knights' expression, and thought that he was frightened. Haha, that's great. The box court world is truly a beautiful place. 16 Knights bumped his fists together with a look of extreme excitement. Black Rabbit was shocked. This situation doesn't seem right? Shouldn't it be, because it's too dangerous? Black Rabbit is asking for a safe and effective way to participate in the bestowal tournament while still being able to survive. Sounds like a good idea. You can only enjoy fun when there's danger. I gave up my wealth to come here. Wouldn't it be too boring if I stayed here peacefully? Jiu Yuan Flying Bird also had a not bad expression on his face. Even Miss Fei Niao was like this? Black Rabbit was close to being stunned. I just want to make friends. Haruhibe Masuaki's words gave Black Rabbit a glimmer of hope. But since the two of them are excited, then I'll be the same. All right, the Black Rabbit was completely dumbfounded. What kind of logic was this? But fortunately, Wuming didn't give Black Rabbit a fatal blow. I don't mind. Although I was invited, I'm only here to look for something. Wuming's words made Black Rabbit react. Speaking of which, Black Rabbit only sent out 3 letters. Why were 4 people summoned? 16 knights, and the others didn't know this question. Only Wuming knew about it. I think your 3 letters should be inviting the 3 of them. As for my letter, it's not that simple. But this gave Black Rabbit a fright. Could it be that there's a community that invited Mr. Villo? But that shouldn't be. No, if that's really the case, then it's terrible. Could it be that Black Rabbit inadvertently stole people from other communities? Community? This gave Wuming a good piece of information. Wuming guessed that it might be the name of an organization in this world, just like the Magic Association in the Godslayer world. But thanks to this information, Wuming could more or less guess the reason why Black Rabbit summoned 16 knights and the others back and treated Wuming and the others so kindly. Looking at Black Rabbit's worried look, it was obvious that Black Rabbit's community wasn't strong, or rather super weak, so it was afraid of disputes with other communities. And Black Rabbit summoned talents from another world to supplement the community's strength. From Black Rabbit's hesitation after guessing that it was Wuming who was summoned by other communities, it could be seen that this kind of thing wasn't common. It could be guessed that there shouldn't be any other communities that needed to invite people from another world to supplement their strength. In addition, Wuming said that the invitation of 16 knights and the others was related to Black Rabbit, and Black Rabbit's mood was slightly low. It could be said that Wuming's guess was very close. Combining all the guesses, it was that Black Rabbit's community might be very weak, or it might be the weakest, so it urgently needed to supplement its strength, which was why it used such an extreme method. After all, if the invited people didn't want to join Black Rabbit's community, then Black Rabbit's invitation would be wasted. Wuming didn't think it was easy to invite people from another world. Perhaps it was easy for those powerful communities, but Wuming felt that it might be extremely difficult for Black Rabbit's community. Don't worry, I wasn't invited by other communities. I came for other reasons. Wuming's words calmed Black Rabbit, whose hair had changed color due to fear and worry. Chapter 571. Really? Black Rabbit breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. Fortunately, Wuming was not invited by other communities, and Black Rabbit's worries were not unreasonable. After all, no matter where it was, as long as it was related to benefits, it would easily lead to disputes, battles, and even deaths. And with the level of mental power Wuming displayed before, Even in this world, he was a talent that was highly sought after. Wuming could imagine that if Wuming was really summoned by other communities, then after that community knew that Black Rabbit did something similar to poaching, they would definitely go against Black Rabbit's community. After all, when coming to an unfamiliar place, people often tended to be close to the first friendly force they met. If Wuming joined Black Rabbit's community because of this, then the community that invited Wuming to this world would definitely not give up. And because Black Rabbit's community was in the wrong, coupled with the fact that they were weak, even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. But all of this was based on the fact that Wuming was invited by other communities. Then, Wuming looked at Black Rabbit, who was patting her full chest with a relaxed expression. Then, combined with the community you mentioned, it's almost time to start talking about the problem of your community, Black Rabbit. Wuming's words made Black Rabbit, who had just relaxed her delicate body, tremble, and she was stunned on the spot. Black Rabbit knows. Black Rabbit said with a gloomy expression. If you want to participate in the gift competition in this world, you must join a force called the community. Could it be a force like the mafia? This sentence was inexplicably appropriate when it came from the seemingly delinquent 16 Knights. No, it's not that kind of evil organization. Just like Black Rabbit's community, it's like a home. Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights angrily. I'm just kidding, 16 Knights responded with a smile, but there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. At this moment, Black Rabbit, who was running around for home, no longer had the right to be teased. I think everyone here should roughly understand. Please continue, Black Rabbit. Gyo Asuka looked at Wuming, 16 Knights Reverse, and Haruai Hiroyuki. Seeing that no one had any objections, he signaled Black Rabbit to continue. After all, what he was going to talk about next was probably the community of Black Rabbits. Introducing his own home was a very important thing. Then the Black Rabbit lowered its head slightly, as if it was thinking about its language. Wuming guessed that Black Rabbit was considering how to convince them to join the Black Rabbit community. Then Wuming spoke. Please raise your head, Black Rabbit. Wuming not only made the Black Rabbit raise its head, but it also attracted the attention of the 3 problem children. Let me say this first. I won't refuse to join someone just because their community is weak. Wuming's words stunned Black Rabbit. By the way, I'm the same. 16 Knights responded to Wuming's words with a wicked smile. Mr. 16 Knights. Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights Reverse emotionally. I gave up a lot of money to come here. If the community I'm going to join is too good, I won't want to join. Gyo Asuka flicked her hair and said elegantly, Miss Asuka. Black Rabbit looked at Gyo Asuka even more emotionally. I just want to make friends. Then Haruai Hiroyuki looked at Wuming, 16 Knights Reverse, and Gyo Asuka. But since they all said so, then I'll join them. Miss Asuka. Although this reason made people feel helpless, Black Rabbit was still very grateful. Wuming looked at the 3 problem children in surprise. Through these words, Wuming could see that the 3 problem children had also guessed the purpose of Black Rabbit inviting people from another world. But Wuming was not surprised. Anyone who was slightly smarter, after seeing Wuming beat around the bush and Black Rabbit's various actions, could more or less guess Black Rabbit's purpose. Therefore, Wuming was not surprised that the 3 of them guessed Black Rabbit's purpose. But Wuming was quite concerned about what they said. But thinking about it carefully, it was not strange for problem children to say such things. Everyone. Thank you so much. Black Rabbit's eyes were filled with tears as he bowed 90 degrees to Wuming and the other 3. Then, the 3 problem children did not let down their title of problem children. Wuming even suspected that this was the 3 problem children's tactic of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. It's too early to thank me. I just won't directly refuse to join. I didn't say that I would join. Eh? Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights Reverse blankly. I just don't want to join a community that's too good. If it's a community that's slightly worse, maybe I'll join. Black Rabbit turned his head mechanically and looked at Gyo Asuka. Even Miss Asuka. Since the 2 of them are like this, then I'll be like them and tease Black Rabbit. Haruai Hiroyuki said the cruelest words without any expression. So everyone is teasing Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit lowered his head. So it's like this? Wu-Ming said lightly and shook his head helplessly. His conjecture was actually correct. Then, Black Rabbit took out a paper fan from nowhere and hit the problem children's heads hard. You adult problem children, ah. That's why, girl, you're still too young. How can you believe the words of problem children? Wu-Ming smiled helplessly. Then, I say, I'm not teasing you. Black Rabbit. Why did you hit my head? Wu-Ming helplessly rubbed his head where Black Rabbit hit him. Because this topic was brought up by Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit can see that Mr. Villo is also an adult problem child. Black Rabbit puffed up his cheeks and said angrily, Good job. Times 2. Jio Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki gave Wu-Ming a good job gesture. This made Wu-Ming feel his head hurt. Although it didn't hurt, when Wu-Ming thought about how he was classified as a problem child by Black Rabbit, he inexplicably felt a trace of sadness. All right, little brother, you should know that we're in this together. 16 Knights put his arm around Wu-Ming's shoulder and said generously, Should I have left immediately after coming to this world? These 3 guys won't die from the fall anyway. Wu-Ming was speechless. Wu-Ming even started to suspect that these 3 guys didn't guess the situation of Black Rabbit's community, through Wu-Ming's beating around the bush and Black Rabbit's behavior, but purely to tease Black Rabbit. But of course, that was a joke. Then Black Rabbit, can you tell us why you invited us? Jio Asuka finished speaking and straightened his body, looking quite serious. Not only Jio Asuka, but Haruai Hiroyuki and 16 Knights also became serious. So you guessed it already. Wu-Ming chuckled lightly, and also began to get serious. Speaking of which, Wu-Ming felt that he had been very serious all along. You don't have to hide it, Black Rabbit. Compared to being tricked into a weak community, I think they're more willing to take the initiative to join a weak community. The 3 problem children nodded along with Wu-Ming's words. Wu-Ming's words became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Black Rabbit began to talk. Actually, Black Rabbit's community is now a community that doesn't even have a name or a flag, which is the so-called no name. Chapter 572. Black Rabbit told everyone about her community's situation in one breath. Originally, a few years ago, Black Rabbit's community's flag flew all over the East District, but because the existence of the Demon King forced them to participate in the gift competition, they lost their companions, name and flag. Only Black Rabbit and Ren Russell were left to participate in the gift competition. The remaining 120 members were all children under the age of 10, who couldn't participate in the gift competition. And in this box court world where participating in the gift competition was the standard of survival, the current state of No Name could be said to be facing a life and death crisis. No Name, who was at the bottom, was in urgent need of new companions to save them, so Black Rabbit used the items that she had painstakingly obtained to summon people from the other world. They were 16 Knights Reversal, Jiu Yuao, and Haruai Hikari. Although there was one more now, but because Wu-Ming didn't belong to anyone, this was a good thing for No Name, as current state. While she was at it, Black Rabbit also explained to Wu-Ming and the others about the division of different districts and classes. The box court world was divided into 4 districts: East, South, West, and North. There were 2 super huge barriers called the boundary walls that separated them. And the mountain that Wu-Ming saw in the sky before was the intersection of the 2 boundary walls. And at this moment, Wu-Ming and the others in No Name were at the outermost position of the East District of this world. And there was also a saying about the outer gate. In this world, other than the 4 districts of East, South, West, and North, there were also 7 classes. Each class was represented by a corresponding number. The smaller the number, the stronger the strength. And these 7 classes were also divided. 1, 2, 3, and 4 digits were the upper class, 5 digits were the middle class, and 6 and 7 digits were the lower class. Just like where No Name was currently at, it was 210-5380 outer gate, the lower class of 7 digits. And according to Black Rabbit, her community No Name was undoubtedly the weakest existence in this 7-digit outer gate. Question: are names and flags important? Jiu Yuao raised her hand and asked. After all, in the eyes of normal people, Losing a companion was a serious matter, but weren't names and flags randomly made up? Very important. It's quite important, Black Rabbit said excitedly. In this world, the importance of the community's name and flag is probably equivalent to the importance of a country's name and flag in other worlds, Wu Ming analyzed. Mr. Villo is right. That is a very important existence. Black Rabbit's expression sank again. Question, what is a Demon King? Haruhaibyayoi raised his small hand. Reverse 16 Knights was also quite interested in this term. It sounded like the existence of a big boss. That's an existence that uses the natural disasters of the box court world. No one wants to encounter it. Then Black Rabbit explained the existence of the Demon King to everyone in detail. There was a special authority in the box court world called the Organizer Authority. The person who had the Organizer Authority could forcefully hold the game of bestowment. The participants could not choose whether they wanted to participate or not. They could directly ignore their wishes and force them to participate. And the existence that had the Organizer Authority was known as the Demon King. In the game of bestowment organized by the organizer, people could choose to participate in the game of bestowment or not. The Demon King, no matter what you choose, forced you to participate in the game of bestowment organized by the Demon King. Once the Demon King initiated the game of bestowment, no one could refuse. They had to participate. If they won, everyone would be happy. Moreover, they could choose to let the defeated Demon King join their community to strengthen their strength. But often, the truth was not that simple. Demon Kings were basically powerful existences. The top target of the Demon Kings was also a community that the Demon King judged could not defeat in the gift competition. After all, the Demon Kings could not challenge a community that was much stronger than them. That would be no different from sending themselves to their deaths. But this also meant that if a community was targeted by the Demon King, there was basically no chance of survival. That was how Black Rabbit's community, No Name, was dragged into the game of bestowment by the Demon King. Then, it was defeated overnight and its companion, name, and flag were taken away. Then, why not disband the current community and form a new one with a name and flag? Reverse 16 Knights asked. After all, according to Black Rabbit's introduction, the game of bestowment did not say that this could not be done. 16 Knights' meaning was very simple. Only by forming a new community with a name and flag could Black Rabbit's, No Name survive. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Wu Ming retorted. Establishing a new community, other than having a name and flag, was exactly the same as No Name, in other aspects. No companions, no talents. And the people in this area knew that this new community was the former No Name. Therefore, it was basically impossible for them to join this new community formed after No Name was disbanded. And according to Wu Ming's guess, the tool to summon people from another world was not something that could be seen casually. Otherwise, Black Rabbit would not have only used it now. Instead, it used it after No Name was invaded by the Demon King. All in all, even if a new community is established, No Name is still No Name. It's just a No Name, with a layer of skin over it. Its essence will not change. Mr. Villo is right. However, even without those factors, Black Rabbit would not do that. Black Rabbit raised its head and looked at Wu Ming and the others with a firm gaze. Black Rabbit wants to protect everyone's community. Protect this home that will still exist even if it is invaded by the Demon King and abandoned. Protect this home that everyone can see when they return. Black Rabbit said emotionally. Unknowingly, tears once again hung from the corners of its eyes. Black Rabbit does indeed want Mr. Villo, Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, and Miss Yao to join my community. However, because Black Rabbit knows that its community is a weak one, it was actually prepared to hide it from you at the beginning and wait until you join Black Rabbit's community. Black Rabbit said in a low voice. However, I didn't expect Mr. Villo's intelligence to be so high. You actually guessed the information of Black Rabbit's community through indirect reasoning. Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, and Miss Yao also saw some clues through Mr. Villo's method. The four of you are quite outstanding talents. Black Rabbit smiled at the four of them. Even if everyone does not choose to join Black Rabbit's community, Black Rabbit will not be angry and will not have any complaints. After all, Black Rabbit's community is the weakest existence among the 7 digits. Moreover, the invitation letter only brought people from another world. It does not have the ability to force them to join the community. Then, Black Rabbit lowered its head and did not speak again. At the same time, Wuming and the others did not make a sound. Just like that, the 5 of them fell into silence. Then Black Rabbit will leave first. Black Rabbit, who lowered its head, stood up without lifting its head, turned around and walked away. Thinking about it, after knowing that the community that was about to join was the weakest, no name, that did not even have a name and flag, who would want to join? Probably no normal person would choose to join such a community. A few teardrops fell from Black Rabbit's cheeks. As Black Rabbit walked, the teardrops fell to the ground. However, Wuming and the others who saw this scene smiled helplessly. The 4 of them looked at each other. Jiu Yufei and Haruai Hiroyuki chose to give the right to speak to Wuming and 16 Knights, who were the boys with the loudest voices. Then 16 Knights gave Wuming a look that said, "You were the first to discover Black Rabbit's purpose," and signaled to give the right to speak. Wuming smiled helplessly, then responded to 16 Knights and the others with a look that said, "Leave it to me." Then, Wuming spoke to the Black Rabbit who was walking away. "Please wait a moment, Black Rabbit. There is something I need to explain." After hearing Wuming's voice, Black Rabbit was stunned at first, then raised its hand to wipe its tears and turned around. "Excuse me, Villo-san, is there anything else you want to say?" Black Rabbit smiled happily at Wuming and the others. Although Wuming guessed that Black Rabbit might have experience as a host, Wuming had to admit that the smile at this moment was really ugly. People who showed this fake and forced smile to make themselves happy were not happy at all. "First stop this smile, Black Rabbit," Wuming said bluntly or mercilessly to Black Rabbit. This made Black Rabbit's body tremble, and its smile also froze. "Listen carefully, Black Rabbit. Generally speaking, normal people can't join your community," Wuming said bluntly as if he was mocking Black Rabbit. Like dark clouds, Wuming's words covered Black Rabbit's blue sky, causing Black Rabbit's smile to disappear, and its eyes to become slightly moist. However, isn't such a community the most suitable for problem children? Wuming's words were like clouds parting, allowing Black Rabbit to see the blue sky again. In other words, Black Rabbit said with uncertainty, "I've decided to join your community. This time I'm not lying." Wuming smiled slightly. At this moment, Wuming's smile was like the sun after parting the clouds, illuminating Black Rabbit's heart. "Everyone, thank you very much." This time, Black Rabbit showed a smile of indecent ceremony, but it was an unusually pure and beautiful smile that came from the bottom of its heart. As if to highlight this moment, the sun became brighter, reflecting this beautiful scene. Chapter 573. The Black Rabbit was quite happy at this moment, but someone had to come out to tease the Black Rabbit at this time. "Wait a moment, Black Rabbit. The one who wants to join is just a little brother." A frivolous smile appeared on 16 Knight's face. "Indeed, I didn't say that I wanted to join." Jiu Fei Niao looked at Black Rabbit with a teasing gaze. However, the person he hated the most was still Haruhibu Yaichi. "I don't have any objections, but since that's the case, I'll just follow the 2 of them." Hearing the words of these 3 problem children, Black Rabbit was stunned on the spot, and its bright smile froze. Everyone must be joking. At this moment, Black Rabbit did not know what expression he should use to face these problematic children. "Yeah, I was just kidding." 3 very clearly Black Rabbit was played again. "You problematic children. Aha." Although the place where Wu Ming and the others were summoned was the 210-5380 Outer Gate in name, there was only a large forest there. No Name was once the largest community in the East District, so it naturally had a large piece of land. Obviously, No Name wasn't here, because if they wanted to get to No Name, they would have to walk for a while. On the way to the outer gate of 210-5380, Black Rabbit, who was leading the way, dropped its shoulders weakly. Seriously, The problem child is definitely a terrifying existence comparable to the Demon King. The Black Rabbit complained weakly. The Black Rabbit was almost traumatized by the problem child it summoned. After seeing the 210-5380 outer gate in front of his eyes, as well as the current leader of no name, Ren Russell, waiting in front of the gate, Black Rabbit's mood became a lot more cheerful. "Young Master Ren, I've brought the newcomer back." Black Rabbit excitedly waved at Ren Russell, who was waiting in front of the city gate, and shouted loudly. After seeing Black Rabbit and hearing Black Rabbit's words, Ren's mood value obviously rose a lot. After that, Ren nodded and walked towards Black Rabbit. "Black Rabbit, welcome back." After that, Ren asked the Black Rabbit as if he was confirming something. "Are these two ladies the new members?" "Yes, these four are." Black Rabbit's voice stopped abruptly. Originally, Black Rabbit turned around and spread out his arms, preparing to introduce Wuming and the other three. As soon as Black Rabbit turned around, he realized that only Jiao Asuka and Haruai Biao were left behind. Wuming and 16 knights had already disappeared. Ah! Black Rabbit was so scared that her face turned pale, and her hair showed signs of changing color. Where did Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Knights disappear? Black Rabbit asked Kyumu Asuka and Kasuga Hibakushi excitedly. 16th Eventide said that he wanted to see World's End, so he left on his own. Jiufei Niao kindly replied. "What about Mr. Villo?" The Black Rabbit asked again. As for Vero, because 16 Knights said, "We still have a fight to fight," he was dragged away by 16 Knights, Haruai Hiroyuki said to Black Rabbit Mamoru in a serious tone. Just as Black Rabbit was about to ask again, Jiufei Niao spoke first, interrupting Black Rabbit. "Right, Mr. Villo said something else." Then Haruai Hiroyuki mimicked Wuming's tone as if he was agreeing to Jiufei Niao's words. "Tell Black Rabbit that 16th Eventide and I will be back soon. Don't worry, I'm here. You don't have to worry about 16th Eventide." Those were the Villo's last words. How can you not have to worry? In Black Rabbit's opinion, Wuming was also a problematic child, just slightly less dangerous than 16th Eventide. However, it still did not make her feel at ease. Then, Black Rabbit lowered her head with a gloomy face. "Young Master Ren, please take care of Miss Asuka and Miss Hiroyuki. Black Rabbit will be back soon." After saying that, Black Rabbit's blue hair instantly turned pink. Then Black Rabbit took a step back and kicked off the ground. Black Rabbit could directly jump out. Then she quickly skipped away. "Looks like Black Rabbit is angry." Haruai Hiroyuki looked at the pink hair floating behind Black Rabbit and nodded. But it has to be said, Black Rabbit really did look like a rabbit at this moment. The jumping ability of Hakata's rabbits is not bad. Jiufei Niao looked at Black Rabbit, who disappeared into the distance, and muttered. Then please follow me. I'll show you around here," Ren said somewhat cautiously. Haruai Hiroyuki and Jiufei Niao looked at Ren, who was the leader of the community in name, as if thinking about something. It was as if they were judging him as a leader, which made Ren feel even more nervous. However, Jiufei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki were not judging Ren, but surprised that Ren was also a child. Although Black Rabbit said that only she and Ren Russell, who was the leader of the community, had the ability to participate in the gift competition, Black Rabbit did not specify Ren Russell's age. Ren Russell was more than 10 years old, but he was probably only 11 or 12 years old. Letting a child in his teens become the leader of the community, no name, was really at the end of the road. That. Miss Hiroyuki, is there any other problem?" Ren mustered up his courage and asked. Only then did Jiufei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki recover. After all, staring at someone was very rude. "Sorry for being rude." Then Ren Koen, let's go. After Jiufei Niao said that, Haruai Hiroyuki nodded his head. Ren Russell, who was feeling extremely nervous, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Ren led Jiufei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki through the city gate. On the other side, reverse 16 knights in Wuming, one on the ground and one on the sky, were moving towards the east at an extremely fast speed. Behind reverse 16 knights was a cloud of dust that was stirred up by the running. The reason for that was because reverse 16 knights and Wuming had made a bet to see who could reach World's End first. Originally, Wu Ming was worried that 16 knights would not be able to reach World's End before nightfall. However, "Don't worry about me, little brother. I am very strong. Be careful not to fall," Reverse 16 Knights said as he cast a provocative look at Wu Ming. After hearing those words from Reverse 16 Knights, Wu Ming realized that the person before him was not an ordinary person. However, Reverse 16 Knights had not displayed any special abilities in front of Wu Ming. He had only displayed his intellect. Thus, Wu Ming had subconsciously assumed that Reverse 16 Knights was a wise man type of character. Reverse 16 Knights' words did not sound like a bluff at all. Thus, Wu Ming began guessing Reverse 16 Knights' abilities. However, it was better to see it for himself. Since the other party was so confident, Wu Ming made up his mind. "I will not go easy on you, delinquent 16th Knights." As a result, Wu Ming used his mental power to fly up, and flew a short distance in an instant. Afterward, Wu Ming turned back with the idea of seeing Reverse 16 Knights' abilities. As a result, Wu Ming saw that Reverse 16 Knights had caught up with him like an ordinary person running. This caused Wu Ming to be greatly shocked. Then the scene from before appeared. Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights, one in the sky and one on the ground, were moving toward the east at almost the same speed. Now, Wu Ming knew that Reverse 16 Knights had caught up with Wu Ming by running on the ground. There was no special ability. Could it be an ability like physical enhancement? Wu Ming guessed. However, Wu Ming felt that it was not that simple. Therefore, Wu Ming increased his flying speed by a lot. The air seemed to explode, producing an explosive sound. That was a sonic boom. By a conservative estimate, Wu Ming's current flying speed was at least 10 kilometers per second. Even so, Reverse 16 Knights was still able to easily catch up with Wu Ming. In fact, he had even surpassed Wu Ming to arrive before Wu Ming. "What is it, little bro? Is that all you have? If you continue like this, you will lose," Reverse 16 Knights said without turning back. Additionally, he increased his flying speed. Wu Ming looked ahead. It was a miraculous natural scene. Countless trees had stopped growing before him. Instead, they were replaced by a large body of water. There was a cliff that was higher than Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights. A waterfall that was more spectacular than any other waterfall flowed down from the cliff. The waterfall flowed down from the cliff into a bottomless abyss. That was probably World's End. Indeed, if Wu Ming were to continue like this, he would lose this little bet. "How can that be all you have?" Wu Ming revealed a smile. Due to Reverse 16 Knights' provocation, in an instant, Wu Ming's flying speed increased by another notch. Wu Ming exerted a force through the air, and the air behind Wu Ming was repelled, creating a temporary vacuum. Instantly, Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights' figures smashed into the body of water. Boom! Chapter 574. Dong. Due to their collision, a large splash of water was sent flying up into the sky, creating a scene akin to rain that did not cease for a long time. Combined with the sun hanging high up in the sky, it created a rare scene of a sun shower. Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights stood up, their bodies drenched with water. They then looked around. Although they were in a body of water, the water here was very shallow, less than half a meter deep. Thus, the two of them were standing in the half-meter deep water. "Is this World's End? It's really spectacular," 16 Knights said happily, not caring about her wet body. Wu Ming turned to look at Reverse 16 Knights, the smile on his face remaining pure. This time, however, the smile on Reverse 16 Knights' face was one of excitement and joy. It gave Wu Ming a feeling that he had come to the right world. Due to that, Wu Ming's vexed feelings of having to search for his main body in this incomparably large box court world eased. It is indeed spectacular. Although I have been to many worlds, this is my first time seeing something like this. Wu Ming stretched his hand out to feel the coolness brought about by the artificial rain. Wu Ming relaxed. The water here was exceptionally cool. "Oh, little brother, you still have that kind of ability." 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming with a chuckle. "I am not a human after all. It is not surprising for me to have some special abilities." Wu Ming smiled. "Oh, is that so? Looks like this bet ends in a tie between me and this non-human little brother. Next, Reverse 16 Knights revealed a particularly brutal smile. Now that you've seen World's End, let us begin our fight here. Next, Reverse 16 Knights charged at Wu Ming, creating a large splash of water and countless pebbles. Dong! It was an ordinary stomp. And yet, an explosive sound rang out. Then, the human known as the 16 Knights in reverse met the ghost, known as Varosiris at the end of the world. At the same time, not far away from World's End, a pink-haired bunny girl, or rather Miss Black Bunny, who was having a headache because of Mr. Problem Child, was skipping her way towards World's End. Seriously, where did those two problem children go? Black Rabbit complained helplessly. Although the outer gate of 2105380 was very close to World's End, do not forget, the surface area of this world was very big. Although the outer gate of 2105380 was the closest to World's End, it was still not a place that ordinary people could reach. To put it simply, there were 2 points. Firstly, it was too far away. As mentioned before, the box court world was very big. The 7-digit outer sect was also quite a distance away from the end of the world. Secondly, danger. Due to the area between the 7-digit number of outer disciples and World's End, no one would care even if a robbery or murder were to occur there. After all, Hakata's laws were only effective for those in the upper 7 digits. Of course, if you robbed some big shot, they wouldn't mind teaching you a lesson and destroying your corpse. No, it would be more accurate to say that even if you were in the lower 7 digits, as long as no evidence of your crime could be found, nothing could be done about it. Not being found out was not the same as committing a crime. That was not a joke. Naturally, if you were to be caught committing a crime, your punishment would be much harsher compared to ordinary criminals. However, such a thing was unlikely to happen here. That was because there were many trial grounds for Asura gods and Buddhas here. That was another way of saying danger. The gift competition for the trial held by the Asura gods and Buddhas. That was a death game where a moment of carelessness could cost you your life. Black Rabbit was precisely that. If those Asura gods and Buddha's flowery words deceived us into participating in the gift competition, that would be terrible. Black Rabbit said worriedly as she moved forward. As everyone knew, many Asura gods and Buddhas, due to having lived for too long, liked to stir up trouble when they had nothing better to do. Thus, in the face of new faces who were unfamiliar with the rules, those Asura gods and Buddhas would tempt them. At present, Black Rabbit had almost reached the edge of World's End. I remember that Water God's trial grounds are in front of us. I hope they are not there, Black Rabbit said expectantly. Then, a giant wave and a series of roars that soared into the sky completely shattered Black Rabbit's hopes. No. It can't be. Black Rabbit was stunned for a moment. Then, she quickly reacted and dashed in the direction of the wave. In just a few seconds, Black Rabbit had passed through the forest. The waters of World's End appeared in front of Black Rabbit, including the figures of Wu Ming and Reverse 16 Knights who were soaked in the rainwater formed by the waves, and in between the two of them, the figure of a huge unconscious white water snake. Hey. Faced with such a scene, Black Rabbit was stunned at first. Then, she let out a startled cry. Yo, isn't this Black Rabbit? Why did you change color? Reverse 16 Knights asked without any self-awareness. Black Rabbit, you must have run around without permission. That's why your hair changed color, 16 Knights. Wu Ming waved his hand with an I am quite self-aware expression. This clearly has something to do with Mr. Villo. How can Mr. Villo say something like that? Black Rabbit was so infuriated by the two of them that she bellowed. Mama, it's all 16 Knights' fault. Wu Ming instantly pushed the blame onto Reverse 16 Knights. Hey little brother, when I pulled you away, didn't you agree as well? We are rivals. We have to bear the responsibility together. Despite saying that, the smile on Reverse 16 Knights' face did not diminish. It did not match his words at all. By the way, what are you two doing here? Black Rabbit said, giving up on herself. Isn't it obvious? Come with me to World's End and have a look. While you're at it, let's have an exciting fight. 16 Knights Reversal smiled at Black Rabbit. Right. That's right. Black Rabbit suddenly reacted after hearing 16 Knights' words. This is World's End's water god, right? Did you two defeat the water god? Black Rabbit pointed at the unconscious white water snake and said in disbelief, Ah, water god? Is it this snake? 16 Knights laughed in disbelief. Unexpectedly, this big white snake was actually a water god. How interesting. After 16 Knights and I arrived at World's End, we enjoyed the scenery. Then 16 Knights began sparring with me. Wu Ming began explaining. Next, reverse 16 Knights continued Wu Ming's words. Then this fellow suddenly charged out while little brother and I were fighting. It said that we had disturbed its slumber, and that it had to participate in its gift competition to undergo its trial. Next, reverse 16 Knights revealed a pure and wicked smile. Then this guy was defeated by me and my brother. Black Rabbit was pleasantly surprised by reverse 16 Knights' answer. Although there were only 2 of them, their combined strength had allowed them to defeat the water god. This power allowed Black Rabbit to see the future of their no name. However, it was not that Black Rabbit did not believe it. It was also not that Black Rabbit discriminated against humans. Rather, could 2 mere humans really defeat the water god of World's End, who possessed a divine spark? Seeing the puzzled look on Black Rabbit's face, Wu Ming began explaining to Black Rabbit. Don't listen to 16 Knights' nonsense, Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit patted its chest and breathed a sigh of relief. As expected, they had used some method to defeat the water god. This was in line with the theory of humans using their wits to defeat their enemies. It was this snake that broke into the space between 16 Knights and me. Before it could finish its sentence, it was accidentally knocked out by our fists. Sigh. Black Rabbit was dumbfounded. Next, a cry of shock reverberated through the sky once more. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Chapter 575. The artificial rain in the World's End did not last for long. After the rain stopped, a beautiful rainbow appeared in the World's End. However, Wu Ming, reverse 16 Knights and Black Rabbit did not see this beautiful scene. On the way back to the outer gate of World 210-5380, Black Rabbit held onto a seedling of an unknown plant with both hands and skipped ahead. It was clear that Black Rabbit was in a good mood. This time, Wu Ming and reverse 16 Knights did not disappear. Instead, they obediently followed behind Black Rabbit. Why? After all, with Black Rabbit around, the fight between Wu Ming and reverse 16 Knights ended without a conclusion. Not long after Wu Ming and reverse 16 Knights began their fight, the giant snake that Black Rabbit addressed as the water god appeared to disturb them. Then Black Rabbit arrived as well. After being disturbed time and time again, reverse 16 Knights lost the will to fight with Wu Ming. In the end, reverse 16 Knights and Wu Ming agreed to continue if there was an opportunity. Wu Ming had no choice but to agree. Heaven had taken pity on him. He did not want to fight with reverse 16 Knights anymore. As an origin dragon that lived in the Great Origin, Wu Ming's physical strength was not weak. He did not have to worry about fighting with a human. That said, the human was not ordinary at all. Due to the fact that Wu Ming was only in his spiritual form, his physical strength was far from comparable to that of an origin dragon. Still, Wu Ming's physical strength was enough for most situations. However, in the face of reverse 16 Knights' punch, Wu Ming utilized the Lune Rune and Yggdrasil's enhancement magic. Wu Ming, who had personally fought reverse 16 Knights, could tell that reverse 16 Knights was a monster in human skin. After admiring the scenery in the World's End, reverse 16 Knights attacked Wu Ming. Instantly, Wu Ming exchanged a punch with reverse 16 Knights. As a result, 16 Knights and Wu Ming both took a few steps back. It could be said that if Wu Ming hadn't reacted in time before the force of Wu Ming's reverse 16 Knights' fist reached his body, Wu Ming might have been sent flying. Wu Ming immediately judged that the pure physical strength of his spiritual body was no match for the 16 Knights reversal. Not bad, little brother. Although I went easy on you, you're the first person to take my fist and not die. This was what 16th Knight had said back then with great excitement. Wu Ming felt a little helpless. She sounded as if 16th Knight often beat people to death. Wu Ming could tell from 16 Knight's aura and moves that 16 Knights had not killed anyone. However, this might have something to do with the fact that he was in an ordinary world. Even so, Wuming would not show mercy. On the contrary, Wuming had to use more strength. Otherwise, he would really be beaten to death by the opponent's strange strength. In the end, because of a series of accidents, the fight between the two was forced to end. However, Wuming always felt that this young man was not that simple. In addition to his extraordinary physical strength, he must have other abilities. Following behind Black Rabbit, Wuming, who was walking side by side with 16 Knights Reversal, quietly glanced at 16 Knights Reversal and kept thinking. Then 16 Knights Reversal noticed Wuming's gaze and smiled at Wuming, full of fighting spirit. However, it's not like I don't have any hidden strength. Wuming returned the same smile as 16 Knights Reversal. Fortunately, Black Rabbit's mind was immersed in the sapling in her hand, and did not notice the smile of Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal. Otherwise, she would have lectured them again. Hee, with this water tree sapling, we don't have to go to other communities to buy water anymore. We finally have our own water source, Black Rabbit said happily. However, Wuming frowned when he heard this. No Name had fallen so low that they had to buy their daily water from other communities? Then Wuming pondered, what kind of existence was the Demon King that attacked No Name, to be able to turn the largest community in the East District into this in one night? After 16 Knights saw Wuming's pondering eyes, he instantly understood what Wuming was thinking. Then, as if he thought of something, 16 Knights Reversal smiled. Little brother, are you interested in taking back the name and flag of No Name from the Demon King's hands? Wuming looked at 16 Knights Reversal and smiled. Of course I'm interested. Taking back the flag and name from the Demon King's hands is a must. Wuming said solemnly. Since Wuming decided to join No Name, then he would work hard for No Name, and not temporarily join an organization to find his original body in this world. However, Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal's words made Black Rabbit tremble and shiver. You two problem children. Don't cause any more trouble. Black Rabbit looked at Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal helplessly, and tried to persuade them. Let's talk about this later when we have the chance. Wuming smiled at 16 Knights Reversal. 16 Knights Reversal spread out his hands and shrugged his shoulders. Wuming was right. After all, even if they talked about it now, they would not be able to find the Demon King that attacked No Name a few years ago. But then again, Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Knights do not look like humans at all. Black Rabbit complained and looked at Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal, as though they were monsters. Have you ever seen a human who could defeat a water god that had obtained a quintessence, and knock the water god unconscious with one punch? At any rate, Black Rabbit had never seen one in his 200+ years of life. In response to Black Rabbit's words, Wuming also looked at 16 Knights Reversal as though he was looking at a monster. It was not surprising that Wuming could defeat the snake. After all, the spirit body of an origin dragon was quite powerful. However, for a pure human like 16 Knights Reversal to be able to defeat a water god that had obtained a quintessence was quite shocking. Back in World's End, Black Rabbit had told Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal about the use of a quintessence. The quintessence of the quintessence world was not the mythical position that Wuming and 16 Knights Reversal believed that gods occupied. It was also not a natural god. Instead, it was a powerful gift that could allow an individual to evolve to the highest level of that species. Simply put, if a quintessence was given to an ordinary snake, the snake would become a gigantic snake god. If a quintessence was given to an ordinary human, the human would become an immortal. If a quintessence was given to a ghost, the ghost would become a ghost god. Additionally, the quintessence also had the ability to strengthen other gifts. In short, it was a very powerful ability. However, the quintessence was not something that could be given to just anyone. Only those Asura gods and Buddhas, or those with special abilities, could give others the quintessence. Additionally, it did not mean that those who were given a quintessence would become invincible. Take the knocked-out snake for example. As Wuming had not come into contact with the people of this world, he was unable to determine how strong the other party was. However, according to the definition of the upper, middle, and lower levels of the quintessence world, Wuming speculated that the snake god could not exceed the middle level, which was a 5-digit number. If such a being could be in existence of the upper level, then the martial strength of this world was too low. It was impossible no matter how he thought about it. Wuming pondered and shook his head. 16 Nights Reversal did not notice Wuming's absent-mindedness. He had the expression of a human as he looked at Black Rabbit with a smile. Hey Black Rabbit, I'm different from this ghost. I'm a pure human. Mr. 16 Nights is really a human? Black Rabbit was a little surprised. After all, an existence with such power was actually a human. He should be surprised no matter what. Then Black Rabbit noticed something wrong. Wait a minute, Mr. Villo is actually a ghost. Black Rabbit looked at Wuming in shock. Wuming nodded. 16 Nights is right. You can also understand that I'm a ghost. As he spoke, Wuming turned his body into a spirit body. Then he reappeared and displayed the ghost's illusory form through spirit body. He's really a ghost. Black Rabbit said in a daze. As a rabbit who had lived for more than 200 years, Black Rabbit still had some knowledge about ghosts. There was a large community related to ghosts in the North District. Ghosts were the same as spirit bodies. They were illusory spirit bodies that were separated from the physical body. Although Wuming's spirit body was essentially the same as the heroic spirits in the Valhalla. Little brother, can you still disappear? That's interesting. You really are a ghost. 16 Nights Reversal looked at Wuming with interest. This once again triggered 16 Nights Reversal's problematic child nature. Then, the Black Rabbit angrily roared at Reverse 16 Nights. Mr. Problematic Child, please stop causing trouble. Yes, I understand. 16 Nights Reversal smiled and nodded as if he had succeeded in teasing Black Rabbit. Is this the outer gate of 210-5380? Wuming, who was not looking ahead, suddenly spoke. Then Black Rabbit and 16 Nights Reversal also looked ahead. It was indeed the place where Black Rabbit and Ren Russell met before. Phew, we're finally here. Black Rabbit breathed a sigh of relief. She was already troubled by the 2 problematic children behind her. Now she was finally free. However, Black Rabbit forgot that 2 problematic children had already entered the city, and they were led by the immature leader Ren. Chapter 576. We are going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. The kind where both sides are betting everything. And they are the ones who started it. What is going on? Black Rabbit brought Wuming and 16 Nights into the city gate and found Ren, Jiyomoto, and Kasuga Hibakushi sitting in an outdoor cafe. Then, the 3 of them told him that they were going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Black Rabbit looked like he was about to collapse when he heard the news. 16 Nights, on the other hand, had an interesting expression. Wuming, on the other hand, was deep in thought. Then as the leader, Ren told him what happened. Originally, Ren brought Jiyomoto and Kasuga Hibakushi to the cafe and waited for Black Rabbit to look for Wuming and 16 Nights. Although life in No Name was tight, the cafe here was very friendly, and no matter how tight life in the community was, it could not be said. In the end, when the 3 of them sat down and ordered, a tall man named Guard Gasper, the leader of the Forsgaro community, suddenly sat down at Jiyomoto and the other 2's seats. He wanted me, Kasuga Hibakushi, and Black Rabbit to join his community, and he even mocked the situation with No Name. He was just like a clown. Jiyomoto held her forehead with one hand and had an, I'm about to be laughed at look. Then, something must have happened, and that's why you guys decided to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Wuming asked with his arms crossed. Although Jiyomoto and Kasuga Hibakushi were problematic children, they were not people who did not know the gravity of the situation. Because he was very angry, he did not consider the consequences of finding trouble, and he did not consider the consequences at all. Jiyomoto and Kasuga Hibakushi calmly said something that made people speechless. Alright, problematic children are still problematic children. You 2 big idiots. Such an answer made Black Rabbit pull out a folding fan from out of nowhere and hit the 2 men's heads. Although there were indeed 2 problematic children, the more important reason was the orc named Guard Gasper. Thanks to Miss Flying Bird's grace, we've learned some things from Guard, Rin continued, but his expression did not look too good. Due to the other parties bragging, my community is the community that has continuously won the gift competition with the other communities by betting on their flags. Jiu Yuanfei's words made Jiu Yuanfei suspicious. After all, Wu Ming had also explained Black Rabbit's words in layman's terms. The world community's flag was as important as the national flag. Logically speaking, it was unlikely that there would be consecutive flag betting competitions. Then, Distant Bird used his grace to control the other party, forcing him to reveal the truth. My ability has the effect of completely dominating the opponent, Jiu Yufei said. It was through this effect that everyone learned about Guard's methods. By secretly capturing the old, weak, women and children of the other community, and then threatening the other community to enter the gift competition with the flag bet. Then by threatening the other community, he won and took the other community into the Forsgaro. Oh, so to say, Guard can be said to be the largest community in this 210-5380 outer sect area. After 16 Knights finished speaking, he looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming naturally understood what 16 Knights meant, so he followed 16 Knights' explanation. Then, Guard must have used some method to control the other communities, so that such a large community can be maintained without chaos. Then, Wu Ming showed a disdainful expression. According to what Guard did, he probably captured some children who were the future of the other communities, and used them as hostages to control the other communities. It couldn't be said that Wu Ming knew a lot, because if Wu Ming was on Guard's side, he would do the same thing. However, Wu Ming would never become someone like Guard. Even if Wu Ming became the villain, Guard's methods would still make Wu Ming despise Wu Ming. Unfortunately, you only guessed half of it right. Distant Bird shook his head. Through Distant Bird's grace of domination, Guard said what he did, and it was indeed the same as what Wu Ming said, but those children have been killed by Guard and even their bodies. Haruai Toshi was halfway through his sentence, and he couldn't continue. Black Rabbit covered her mouth in disbelief, and 16 Knights frowned slightly. Naturally, Jitaka Renwa and Haruai Hiroyuki already knew about it. Black Rabbit, Wu Ming and 16 Knights reversal were no fools either. They naturally knew what would happen to a corpse in the hands of a beast man like Guard. Phew, Wu Ming closed his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't that Wu Ming didn't have any lives on his hands, nor was he a saint, nor was he unable to accept the deaths of those children. But Wu Ming was really angry with Guard's inhumane approach. The most important reason why Wu Ming liked humans was that humans had a kind nature. Sure enough, even if they transformed into human form, a beast was still a beast. To be honest, I have the urge to destroy Forsgaro. Although Wu Ming didn't burst out any amazing momentum, the murderous intent in his eyes was real. However, no one reacted to Wu Ming's murderous intent, because Guard's approach was too heartless. But fortunately, we have Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo on our side. It should be more than enough to deal with Guard. Black Rabbit patted her chest and sighed in relief. Ha! What are you talking about? They are the ones who are looking for trouble. It has nothing to do with me. 16 Knights spread her hands, indicating that she wouldn't participate. Eh? Black Rabbit was confused again. You're quite sensible. What about you, Villo? Jiu Asuka didn't care about Black Rabbit's reaction and looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming thought for a moment, then shook his head. If that's the case, you guys should participate in this gift competition. Wu Ming had his own reasons for doing so. Although Wu Ming knew that Guard must be very weak to him, being played around by the two girls, he decided not to make a move for the time being since it was his first time here. Instead, he decided to observe the situation for the time being. He also planned to look up some information to understand this world better. Moreover, this was also in line with Jiu Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki's wishes, so why not? Then it's settled. Haruai Hiroyuki made the final decision. Young Master Ren, why didn't you stop the two of them? Black Rabbit said helplessly. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit, because I couldn't stand it anymore, so. Ren gave Black Rabbit an apologetic smile. That was true. Anyone who encountered such a situation would be filled with righteous indignation. However, without Wu Ming and 16 Knights' participation, Black Rabbit was quite worried. You don't have to worry, Black Rabbit. Haruai Hiroyuki instantly subdued guard when he went berserk. Is Hiroyuki that strong? Black Rabbit looked at Haruai Hiroyuki in surprise. Not only Black Rabbit, but Wu Ming and 16 Knights also looked at Haruai Hiroyuki. Seems like you have some skills, Haruai Hiroyuki. 16 Knights showed an interested smile. Wu Ming also didn't expect that Haruai Hiroyuki, who looked so weak, would be able to subdue the berserk beast man. Together with Miss Jio Yuasuka's ability to dominate, I believe that with Miss Jio Yuasuka and Haruai Hiroyuki, our no-name, will definitely win this gift competition. Run said some encouraging words in one go. Oh! Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Although it was awkward for her to be the only one shouting. This leader is not bad, but she still needs some polishing. Wu Ming thought. Well, since everyone is here, let's go to the no-names territory to take a look. Wu Ming and the other three nodded, and began to follow Run and Black Rabbit to the no-name territory. Chapter 577. This is No Name's base. Jiu Yuao said in surprise. Let alone a base, from Jiu Yuao's point of view. This was clearly a ruin from who knows where. But she couldn't be blamed. Anyone who saw such a scene would be surprised. What appeared in front of Wu Ming's group was a huge ruined courtyard that looked like a castle and a vast wasteland. There was even a huge hole in the middle of the wasteland. 16 Knights walked to the side of a broken wall, and used his hand to lightly grab it. The wall immediately shattered like sand. Haruai Hikari walked to the empty space and grabbed a handful of soil. He found that it was all soil and sand that had lost its nutrients. Black Rabbit, I remember you said that the Demon King's attack happened a few years ago, right? 16 Knights was rarely serious. To be precise, it was 3 years ago. Black Rabbit lowered his head. Jiu Yuao walked to Haruai Hikari's side, and looked at No Name's land that looked like it had been abandoned for hundreds or thousands of years. She frowned. But looking at the broken walls here, it's impossible to reach such a state in just 3 years. It wasn't that Jiu Yuao was merciless, but this scene was too shocking. I'm sorry, this was indeed a fertile land 3 years ago. But because of the Demon King's attack 3 years ago, this land is still like this. Ren lowered his head secretly. It could be said that if Black Rabbit and Ren weren't members of No Name, they wouldn't believe that such a vast land could become like this in just 3 years. No, it should be said that it was in one night. But this land really did become like this on that night 3 years ago. And besides that, No Name's flag, name, and companions were all taken away. The Demon King left the land that has become like this to the remaining 120 members of No Name. But because these lands are barren, there are no other communities that want to take advantage of them. For everyone, it's already good to have a place to stay. Black Rabbit forced a smile, trying to make himself look less sad. Judo Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki looked at each other, nodded, and walked towards the Black Rabbit. What do Miss Fei Niao and Miss Yao want to do? Black Rabbit looked at the two people who were walking towards him and asked. Punish the Black Rabbit. Huh? The Black Rabbit was stunned. Then the Black Rabbit's ears were grabbed by the two people's hands, and it was the kind that was very forceful. Wait a minute. Why did he have to punish the Black Rabbit? And why is the punishment of pulling my ears? The Black Rabbit's eyes were filled with tears as it covered its ears with a pitiful expression. There's no need to do that in front of your companions, Black Rabbit. Jiu Yuanfei pulled on Black Rabbit's ear, and said with interest. We're all companions. There's no need to force yourself like this. Haruai Hikari was the same. However, compared to Q Hikari, Haruai Hikari was happier. I know. So please spare Black Rabbit's ears. Ren stood at the side, and revealed a helpless expression as he looked at Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari pulling on Black Rabbit's ears. So this is the power of the Devil King. Leaving behind a symbol of his destruction to show his strength. What a proper villain. 16 Knights looked at the ruins and said excitedly, without caring about Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari playing with Black Rabbit's ears. Then 16 knights realized that Wuming was nowhere to be seen. After looking around carefully, he realized that Wuming was doing something in the huge hole in the wasteland. "Hey, brother, did you find something?" 16 knights shouted at Wuming and walked towards Wuming. Thanks to this, Jiu Yuanfei and the rest were attracted over. Everyone looked at Wuming, who was standing at the edge of the hole. "Did you really find something?" Jiu Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari let go of Black Rabbit's ears and walked towards Wuming. Only then did Black Rabbit was released. "Let's go take a look too, Black Rabbit," Ren said to Black Rabbit, who was rubbing her ears. Although he said it with an apologetic and helpless expression. Although Black Rabbit was angry that her ears were being played with by the two problem children, she was also curious about Wuming's current situation. So she nodded. The three problem children gathered around Wuming and looked at the hole that wasn't very big. They couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. This hole was created because the Devil King who attacked 3 years ago took away something underground. Black Rabbit began to explain. According to the older generation members of the community, this area has been a land of miraculous power since a long time ago. Many people speculated that there was some kind of powerful blessing buried underground. Every one of them wanted to dig this place up in search of the treasure. However, due to the interference of the various forces, none of them succeeded. It was only when our community heard about this that we moved our headquarters here, Rin explained. Then you don't plan to dig up the gift in the ground? Jiu Yuanfei asked. After all, this was a land that many communities were fighting over. Shouldn't they dig it up to see what was inside? In fact, our community's previous leader led the core members to dig up this land. However, for some reason it was left unsettled. Needless to say, the former members of No Name must have encountered some unexpected situation during the digging process. Moreover, it was an unprecedented situation, so they had no choice but to stop digging. Black Rabbit said with a regretful expression. Black Rabbit is also very curious about what is inside. Unfortunately, Black Rabbit isn't strong enough to see that scene. Then Black Rabbit's expression became serious. Since then, everyone in the community was told not to have any ideas about the treasure under this land. Everyone was obedient, so they didn't bother about what was under the land. And 3 years ago, when the Devil King attacked our community, he took away the mysterious gift under this land. After taking it away, this huge hole was left behind. Hearing Black Rabbit's explanation, 16 knights looked at Wuming with interest. But it seems like little brother has a lot to do with the mysterious gift under this land. 16 knights looked at Wuming, who was starting to get irritated, and said jokingly. Although Wuming didn't say anything, everyone present could see that Wuming was in a very bad mood at the moment. It could be said that Wuming was angry. Although Wuming didn't say anything, his heart was indeed about to explode. The mysterious gift that was once buried in this huge hole was the body of his dragon of origin. Chapter 578. At this moment, Wuming's heart was abnormally complicated, and he felt quite helpless. Originally, after understanding that this world covered an incomparably large area, Wuming would not be able to easily find his original body. Although he could find it as long as he got close, Wuming felt that he would have to put in some effort. As a result, when he got close to the base of No Name, Wuming sensed the presence of his original body. Once he entered, Wuming did not say anything and went straight to the place where he sensed his original body, and then he saw a huge pit. Wuming was stunned at first, then he began to feel irritated. Originally, he thought that he would have to put in some effort, but in the end he sensed the presence of his original body. This made Wuming happy for a moment, and then he realized that he had indeed found traces of his original body's presence, traces that had once existed in this place. And after Wuming finished listening to Black Rabbit's explanation, Wuming was a little angry. The former members of No Name excavating Wuming's body was not a big deal. After all, people were curious about the unknown, and the former members of No Name finally stopped excavating. They must have discovered that Wuming's original body was under the ground. Although he did not know why they stopped, Wuming was quite satisfied that they knew when to advance and when to retreat. And those demon kings who took Wuming's body were really looking for trouble. As the largest community in the East, No Name's strength 3 years ago was definitely not weak, but they still stopped excavating Wuming's original body. Wuming himself also knew that his original body was incomparably precious in a sense, and the former members of No Name being able to resist the temptation was naturally not bad. As for that demon king, since he was able to destroy No Name in one night, then his strength must be even stronger than No Name 3 years ago. And for a demon king who was stronger than No Name 3 years ago, and who wantonly used his authority as the host to attack other communities, there was nothing that he could not, or rather, did not dare to do. He just did not know if the opponent's courage was as strong as his strength. If Wuming found the opportunity, Wuming took a deep breath, trying to relax himself. Then, Wuming looked at everyone apologetically. Sorry everyone, I lost my composure. It's okay, Mr. Villo must have discovered something important to him. That's why he lost his composure. Black Rabbit smiled slightly, and everyone nodded. Mr. Villo is our companion now. If possible, I hope that Villo can pour out all the bitterness in his heart. Black Rabbit could be said to apply what she learned. I am also curious as to what little brother discovered to be so angry, 16 Knights said with a chuckle. Judo Asaka and Haruai Hiroyuki nodded as well. Silent state was quite worrying. Wuming looked at everyone and fell into deep thought. That if it's something that's inconvenient to say, you don't have to say it. Rin saw Wuming's hesitation and quickly tried to smooth things over. Wuming looked at Rin, smiled and shook his head. There's nothing inconvenient, don't worry Rin-kun. Wuming was actually thinking about what to say. Then, Wuming looked at everyone and spoke. 16 Knights and Black Rabbit already know. But I don't think the others know that I'm currently in a state similar to a ghost. Ghost? Jiuyu Wuming and Ren muttered. State. Black Rabbit and 16 Knights paid attention to the other part of Wuming's words. Let's put it this way, although I'm a ghost, I'm not dead, and this ghost state is the result of my own choice. Then Wuming told everyone the half-truth and half-lie that he had conceived. In other words, you met a very powerful enemy, and when both sides were injured, you moved your spirit out of your body, and by chance you found out that your real body was in this world, so you came to look for it. 16 Knights concluded Wuming's words. It feels a little magical, Wuming said calmly, but his eyes were filled with interest when he looked at Wuming, proving that Wuming's heart was not as calm as it seemed. Although it does feel magical, I didn't expect Villo to be a ghost. Let me touch it. Jiyuyu's face was red, and her hands and feet began to move. Her gaze towards Wuming became dangerous, from Wuming's perspective. Although it's theoretically possible to separate one's spirit and body, this is the first time I've seen it. Rin looked at Wuming with interest. Although Rin was the current leader of No Name, he was still a child in his teens. He was far from the wisdom of an adult, so it was natural for him to be interested in strange things. But then again, Mr. Villo can travel between worlds on his own. That's a very powerful ability. Anyway, Black Rabbit could not travel between worlds. And among the people she knew, only the Shura gods and Buddhas had such an ability. Although Wuming's ability to travel between worlds was much higher than what Black Rabbit had imagined. In short, little brother, your real body was taken away by the Demon King, right? Then, are you interested in fighting the Demon King together? 16 Knights suddenly said. Wait a minute. Against the Demon King or whatever, we can't do it alone. Ren was shocked. That's right. Currently, there are only 6 people in our community who can participate in the gift competition. Moreover, Black Rabbit is a noble from the box court, so she can't freely participate in the gift competition. Although young Master Ren can participate in the gift competition, his strength is also very weak. Therefore, our current combat power is only the 4 of you who have just joined the Villo. Therefore, it's better to honestly develop the community bit by bit. Although the sentence, young Master Ren is very weak, made Ren's heart ache, it was the truth. Oh, so what, does having fewer people mean that we're weak? 16 Knights asked with a smile. This 16 Knights' words made Black Rabbit and Run look at each other. Indeed, the number of people doesn't mean the strength of the community. 3 years ago, there weren't many members of No Name, but they still became a community whose flag flew everywhere in the East District. Then there's no problem. Moreover, if we want to develop the community, there's nothing we can do without a name. Since that's the case, then why don't we just aim to become the Demon King? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets, showing the look of a delinquent. Indeed, if we aim to defeat the Demon King that everyone is afraid of, it's hard not to be famous. Yuasuke agreed with 16 Knights' words. Agreed. The quiet girl Haruai Hiroyuki silently raised her small hand, and agreed with the two. But Black Rabbit clearly wanted to say something, but 16 Knights of Reverse interrupted Black Rabbit. Then, little brother, you will definitely agree. After all, your real body was taken away by the Demon King. 16 Knights looked at Wuming, who hadn't spoken yet. Of course, even if you don't defeat the Demon King, I will go back by myself. Wuming said with incomparable determination. One must know that his purpose of coming to this world was to find his real body. His real body was currently taken away by the Demon King who attacked No Name, so there was only one thing left to do, and that was to beat up the Demon King and then take back his real body. What do you think, young Master Tiny Tot? After Wuming agreed, 16 Knights turned around and looked at Run. Young Master Ren. Black Rabbit looked at Ren worriedly. After all, Ren had the title of the community leader. Although it existed in name, the community still needed Ren's approval to do anything. At this moment, the young man named Ren Russell lowered his head and hesitated. Ren didn't really understand the abilities of these new members. He only saw a trace of it from Yuasuke and Haruai Hiroyuki. Both of them had a very powerful gift to some extent. As for Wuming and 16 Knights, although Ren didn't know much about them, when Black Rabbit gave Ren the gift card containing the water tree sapling, Ren already knew that 16 Knights and Wuming were not weak existences. To be able to go to the end of the world alone and defeat the water god, it was enough to give him the courage to challenge the Demon King. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit. Ren apologized to Black Rabbit. Young Master Run, you want to? Black Rabbit looked at Ren in surprise. In this way, how could everyone not know Ren's choice? That's right, I have decided to listen to Lord Reversal's suggestion, and set the community's purpose to defeat the Demon King. Ren looked at everyone with an incomparably determined gaze. Well done, young Master Tiny Tot. 16 Knights laughed wildly. Quite decisive, you have the makings of a good leader. Yuasuke gracefully flicked her hair. As expected, I can find friends here. Although Haruai Hiroyuki's words were somewhat inexplicable, it was still able to liven up the atmosphere. Young Master Run, I support you. Black Rabbit clenched his fist. Even if it's for my main body, I have to work hard, Wuming said jokingly. After all, if it wasn't for his main body, would Wuming not work hard? That was obviously impossible. Then Ren gave an inspiring speech. Then everyone, in order to take back our flag and name, work hard towards the goal of defeating the Demon King. Oh! Black Rabbit roared angrily. This made everyone feel awkward. Taking a closer look, it was 16 Knights who covered Ren's mouth. Wuming and the other 3 also subconsciously kept quiet. Clearly, the Black Rabbit was being teased again. You problematic children, The quick-witted Wuming had already spiritualized, and watched the remaining 3 problematic children being reprimanded by Black Rabbit. What a nice big family. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.